Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, та вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 891 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And we're still playing the waiting game in the Middle East, but things seem like they're very close to popping off. And it's good to see you once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine and the news of the ongoing conflict that is now going to be happening in the Middle East. It is inevitable at this point, as we've heard statements from the Iranians today and their proxies that tonight will be a night to remember. At least that's what they're trying to put out, as Iranian missiles have been prepped and armed inside the Islamic Republic of Iran, ready to fire towards the state of Israel at any given moment. At the exact same time, U.S. naval assets within the area are rapidly moving into position, with the USS Teddy Roosevelt spotted within the Strait of Hormuz near Bandar Abbas, the major port for the Iranian Navy, just today, standing off practically the entire Iranian Navy single-handedly with its carrier strike group. At the exact same time, we have also gotten the news that the United States Congress is considering an official declaration of war, with a bill introduced into the floor of the Senate today stating that the United States military will take armed action against the Islamic Republic of Iran to dismantle any nuclear weapons capabilities that they may have at this very moment. Currently, that has been read twice and has now been moved to the Committee of Foreign Relations, where it will then be read most likely again before it is taken up by a vote within the next congressional session. But nevertheless showing that the United States Congress is seriously considering a declaration of war against the Islamic Republic of Iran at this very moment. Meanwhile, inside of the state of Israel and the surrounding areas, Israel has been conducting an incredibly large amount of preparatory airstrikes today, striking at Hezbollah forces not only within southern Lebanon, but also in the areas in the incredible far north of the country, near to the city, the Syrian city of Homs, or really close to the border checkpoint near the Lebanese northern city of Erbil. We have also been able to hear reports of Israeli airstrikes happening within Syria as well. At the exact same time, diplomatic envoys and diplomatic embassies of multiple different countries have been packing up today and leaving Israel and Lebanon, including the United States diplomatic team, which was boarding a private jet operated by the United States government today and will be flying back to the United States as we are speaking right now tonight. Meanwhile, inside of Ukraine, we were also able to hear of major developments inside of their nation as well, as we were able to hear that once again, more attacks occurred by Ukrainian drones against the Russian airfield of Morozovsk, with heavy explosions being reported around the area and possible heavy damage being inflicted once again on the Russian Air Force forces that are stationed at Morozovsk. We also got to see that a Ukrainian naval drone attack also occurred near Sevastopol or along the Crimean Peninsula today, with Russian footage emerging showing them attempting and failing to stop these naval drones from making their way to their targets. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian defenders have been acting heroically and gallantly today, stopping the Russian offensive, inflicting incredibly high casualties, and slowing down the Russian defense in the Pokrovsk area, with a large amount of documentation and video, picture, and evidence coming out in this area showing us that the Ukrainian forces are fighting incredibly hard. But we have an absolutely amazing and unbelievable amount of news tonight. And we also have a little itty-bitty thing from North Korea that I forgot to throw down on the map, but I've got to make sure to scroll down to that and include that so that way I can scroll the Twitter over when we get to that. So let me see, where in the world was that? Because I know we reposted that onto our main Twitter page. That wasn't like a like thing, that was a repost, I think.
Man, it's probably like a good like 10 or 15 reposts down. It was pretty far down the list.
I found it, so we will show that when it comes up. But nevertheless, also, by the way, a huge shout out to everyone supporting the channel very early on. Thank you all so much. I just saw that because I was off screen for a minute, but I just got back in the control room and saw that. Massive thanks to everyone who's supporting the channel tonight. But we are going to be moving in immediately into the breaking news tonight. We have so much to talk about and so little time, even with the streams usually being 3.5 hours long. That probably won't even be enough time to get through most of the major breaking news tonight. But moving on into the area of Iran, we were able to hear that today they are stating that Iranian air bases are being put on high alert throughout the entirety of the country, which is a preparatory action for further offensive operations by the Iranians to be conducted against the state of Israel. Once again, showing us that on an official public level, preparatory actions are being taken by the Iranians just hours ago for that upcoming attack against the state of Israel. At the exact same time, we were also able to hear that a Russian Il-76, possibly carrying weapons from the Russian Federation, was spotted landing in Tehran, Iran. From what we understand, that aircraft was landing at the Khamenei airfield, or the Khamenei International Airport, right down here at the southern end of Tehran, the major air access for the entirety of the city of Tehran, and largely for the Iranian central government as well. Most likely going to be a very large priority target for the Israeli Air Force going on into the future if this war does become a full-blown conventional conflict, which at this point we are expecting, based off of the statements from everyone in the region, it most likely will turn into one. At the exact same time that IL-76 was landing inside of Iran, we started to see that they put up a very interesting advertisement, if you can call it that, on TV inside of Iran. And this is something that I have to say is really, really interesting. We're actually going to have to take a little bit of a moment to break down this propaganda video that they put out, but we are playing the music because, one, I know that it's so garbage, it's not copyrighted, and two, it loses all the comedic value without the music. So, without further ado, here is the music from the from this war advertisement inside of Iran.
Oh yeah.
Bro, they dropped the mixtape.
Oh, I'm so scared.
Also, I like how they show Iran's wrath and then they just show videos of CGI'd US Air Force aircraft instead, because the Iranian Air Force isn't that ominous looking at all. So they're like, oh, just insert the US Air Force. Like, did you notice that, Matthew? Oh, go ahead.
You know, also they're showing what was that, like B-2 bombers, like our most advanced stealth bomber. It's like, dude, those would glass Iran if those flew over, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they would. But look at this. Better yet. Okay, so these are possibly Iranian because the Iranians do have F-14s in their Air Force. But then from that point forward, this right here literally was just fake. Like, you never put a camera down literally in between your legs in the cockpit, because that would be sitting right on top of the joystick and also near the rudder pedals, which would make controlling the plane pretty damn difficult. So that camera view is most likely fake. Also, the aircraft are CGI'd in. But then also, the next thing is that they have this flash right here of what appears to be some kind of a YF-23 Black Widow, which was a prototype stealth aircraft that the United States made that was never introduced in the service. The other part of the clip, this one, okay, so we have B-52H Stratofortresses of the U.S. Air Force. We then have B-2 bombers further up, and then a whole bunch of other F-15s and F-16s of the U.S. Air Force in this part of the music video. So once again, all of it is U.S. Air Force, but the Iranians in the music video are trying to make it look like it's a part of their armed force. Kind of sad that they're literally using their enemy to make themselves look strong in a clip. And also, this was horrific CGI, like I think y'all can all tell. But then they move on to the next clip. Then we can see the F-22s again, leading in B-1 Lancers. Once again, a U.S. aircraft entirely. There are no B-1 Lancers in any foreign service around the world. So to make themselves look strong, they CGI'd this entire thing together of U.S. military aircraft and tried to make it look like their Air Force instead of the actual Iranian Air Force, which is made up of old junk. Then B-2 Spirits, you know, they obviously don't have any of those. B-52s again. But I want to make sure, I want to make this very clear for y'all. This watermark at the bottom left corner of the screen, it confirms this was on Iranian state television. Like, this is an actual recording that they put out today. This is how much of a joke the Iranian military and the Iranian government really is.
Also, by the way, this is their, like, official war anthem, I believe. Like, for some reason, like, they chose this entire, like, scene and everything to tell people, oh, get motivated for war, this is it. It's like, dude, this does not motivate me at all. It's like you're showing what's going to, like, glass the country if they actually go to war. Like, all this stuff that you're seeing in the video that you're like, oh, wow, that's so powerful. It's like, that's going to be coming over your sky, not Israel's sky.
Also, man, I like how they literally had all of the SAM systems do like a little shimmy at the beginning of the video. Like, let's watch this again. Watch all of the surface-to-air missile systems and how they move. Like, they're all doing a little shimmy. Like, it's like dancing.
This was filmed all exclusively on War Thunder or something. Because all this stuff is fake.
Yeah, like, oh, I actually, believe it or not, the quadruple Gush gun right there, that's actually real. Like, they actually made those out of, like, 4 Gush guns, and they weld them together, and so that's a real anti-air system that they have, but that's, like, about the best that they have. No joke.
That's crazy, but surely it doesn't move that fast in real life, or is this sped up or something?
This is like hyper sped up footage of every air defense system in the clip. Like this right here, the next one, that's hyper sped up. This one's hyper sped up. That's hyper sped up. Like all of them are hyper sped up. But still, nevertheless, it looks as though, according to state television, the Iranian media is trying to get the Iranian public hyped up for war and bloodshed of their own people. In a conflict that they could have avoided if they just stopped trying to mess with Israel with the proxy forces, but nevertheless, they are trying to get everyone ready. And it's a kind of a bit of a joke how they do it, but nevertheless, we can see that they are giving it a serious shot and actually trying to get the Iranian public behind this concept of going to war. Meanwhile, inside of the area of the Persian Gulf, or really just entering the Persian Gulf, we were able to see that the United States carrier, or the supercarrier, the USS Teddy Roosevelt, was spotted inside the Strait of Hormuz today on satellite picture. We can see the area right here on Google Maps where it was spotted. I'll show you all that right down here. So let me move us on down here. So this area is right about, let me see here. I'm trying to make sure that we're correct with this. It is somewhere right up around here, I believe. Somewhere about here. And this is the kind of general area that we're looking at that moment. And from what we know, we were able to see right here on satellite footage, there is the USS Teddy Roosevelt right there, moving through the strait. But you see that it's leaving behind a little bit of a wake, so it's not moving at incredibly fast speeds, which means that it may be traveling at a slower speed, so that way if it needs to immediately start scrambling and deploying aircraft off of the deck, it doesn't have to try and take time or a couple of miles to be able to slow down. We can also see another vessel following along with it. We can't really tell if that is an Arleigh Burke class destroyer. It actually looks a little bit like an auxiliary, the very little we can see of it, but still it does look as though the USS Teddy Roosevelt has now officially moved into the area of the Strait of Hormuz, meaning that the USS Teddy Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group is just a couple of miles away, a couple of dozen miles away from Bandar Abbas, which is the major harbor where most of the Iranian Navy is harbored at this moment, meaning that the USS Teddy Roosevelt is facing down the entirety of the Iranian Navy just dozens of miles away, pretty much entirely on its own. Probably a very foreboding presence for the Iranian Navy, as this one aircraft carrier has about as many active aircraft as about half the Iranian Air Force, which is a pretty considerable thing just for a single aircraft carrier to be hauling. We were also able to get a little bit of a report on the current naval assets that are also in the area as well. And here is that report right here. We have been able to get a little bit better of an assessment of what's going on. From what we understand, in the area of the Persian Gulf, or really the Strait of Hormuz, we were able to see that the USS Teddy Roosevelt, the USS John McCain, and the USS Daniel Inouye are a part of the USS Roosevelt's Carrier Strike Group. Interestingly enough, this Carrier Strike Group appears to have been augmented slightly, as we do not see a third Arleigh Burke class destroyer as a part of this strike group. Usually, like with the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower had a strike group consisting of 3 Arleigh Burkes, 1 Ticonderoga, and the aircraft carrier itself. The Roosevelt's is incredibly light with only 2 Arleigh Burkes, which is a very interesting thing to note, but that may be to try and shave down on supply requirements and to make sure that fleet sustainment or strike group sustainment would be a lot easier, considering that from what we know, there isn't that many auxiliaries in the area around the Teddy Roosevelt at the moment. We also got to hear that the WASP amphibious ready group of the USS Wasp, the LHD-1, is currently somewhere in the area of the Eastern Mediterranean and is rapidly sailing towards the area of Israel, most likely going to anchor somewhere in between Cyprus and Lebanon, or Cyprus and Israel, and then start to conduct operations from there. We also understand that the USS Wasp is carrying a near brigade-sized unit of U.S. Marines. To quickly say this, because I know someone's going to say that's an MEU, which is a Marine Expeditionary Unit, but here on this channel, we're going to classify that as a brigade-sized unit because it is incredibly close to being a brigade-sized element of the United States Marines. We also know that the 5th Fleet is also spread throughout the entirety of the Persian Gulf and all the way out into the Arabian Sea, with 4 Arleigh Burkes on standby, 2 of them being in the Persian Gulf, 1 of them being in the Gulf of Oman, and another one being within the area of the Arabian Sea. The Fifth Fleet is comprised entirely of destroyers and most likely will be conducting air defense operations with their cell blocks that are on board the vessels. The Arleigh Burkes have a special kind of an air defense system that is made up of specific cells which are put in place on the front of the destroyer and also on the rear of the destroyer, and they can be used to be fired at incoming air targets. It is their long-range air defense system, while the Sea Whiz, or the close-in weapon system, provides the closer-up air defense that the missiles can't really do incredibly well at shorter ranges. Meanwhile, the Sixth Fleet, made up of the USS Teddy Roosevelt, the destroyer, not the aircraft carrier, and the USS Buckley, is currently anchored off the coast of Lebanon and Israel, with both of those destroyers on standby to provide air defense if necessary. We also understand that there is an incredibly large amount of auxiliary vessels not inside the area of the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, specifically around the Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group, but there is a decent amount of auxiliaries in the area as and in a whole. The USS Lewis B. Puller, the Bighorn, the Poluxant, or the Patuxent, sorry, correction there, the Alan Shepard, the Robert E. Peary, and the Amelia Earhart are all within the surrounding area of the Arabian Peninsula, but are wildly spread out, but will be able to immediately pick up the slack if necessary and start to conduct fleet sustainment operations if this was to move into a full-on conventional war involving the United States of America. We also understand that there are a couple of NAVCENT task forces in the area, although those seem to be widely spread out from what we know, but a decent amount of them are concentrated around Bahrain and Qatar at the moment, and there's also a fairly large complement of 6 U.S. Coast Guard cutters that are also around the areas of Bahrain and Qatar at this very moment. But from what we understand from the force buildup, there is a very considerable amount of combat vessels in the area, and there's also, interestingly enough, a lot more auxiliaries in the area from our last report, showing that the United States Navy is possibly getting ready to conduct incredibly large naval operations around the Arabian Peninsula for some duration of time, maybe a much longer duration of time, which moves us on into really the major news from the United States of America today, and probably what a lot of people are coming here to try and listen to. Many have been hearing, at least by our title, that the United States Congress is considering an act of war against Iran. And this is something that is actually very interesting, and for one of the few times, actually the only time ever on this channel, we are actually going to be talking about a bill that has been brought forward in the U.S. Senate, and what this may mean for the United States of America, especially if this moves to a vote and actually ends up being approved by a large majority inside the United States Senate. From what we understand, there is currently a bill that has been introduced into the U.S. Senate to authorize the United States military to take action against Iran for threatening U.S. national security with, through the development of a weapon of mass destruction. We're actually going to be reading this off right here. This is Senate Resolution 106, which is a joint resolution to authorize the use of the United States Armed Forces against the Islamic Republic of Iran for threatening the national security of the United States through the development of nuclear weapons. Pretty much, this is an actual declaration of war that is being read right now within the Senate. This is showing that, at least on a small level, there may be some idea, at least within the Senate currently, that a declaration of war may be necessary for the United States to enact, so that way the president can then be authorized to conduct actions against the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is actually a very interesting bill, not because it is a declaration of war. Declarations of war are also always a bill, and they are started either in the House of Representatives or the Senate by normal governmental operations. That's a part of the enumerated powers of the U.S. Congress, is to be able to declare a war. It is then the president's responsibility to execute or carry out on that war. But nevertheless, it is something that is incredibly interesting, because we can actually hear that the latest action on this bill was that it was read twice and then referred to the Committee on Foreign Relations, which is a very interesting move. And another interesting thing, not getting into any of the specifics of politics here, but if I'm correct, Matthew, the person who is the sponsor for this bill may be the minority leader of a specific political group within the Senate, if I'm correct.
So he's actually not, but he is a pretty influential figure on that particular side of the aisle. But one thing I will say is this bill is not dead on arrival. I want to make that clear right off the bat. This is an actual bill to authorize the use of force against Iran in the future. So it does have a possibility of actually going through, passing the Senate, passing the House, and also being sent to the president. But one thing that's sort of telling is there's only one sponsor on the bill, and it's that one senator. Usually there might be a couple of co-sponsors on a bill that if they feel very inclined to get it passed, they might go in and co-sponsor it. But in this case, it's just one. So it's very unclear at this point how much support this bill will actually have behind it. But the mere fact that it's actually been introduced and they're going to be taking a vote on it, that is pretty telling. And to me, I think it's a good thing to put up for a vote.
I think it is something that is good to put up for a vote. This is a very concerning situation, talking about this much like we have been for quite some time. The situation that we're seeing inside the Middle East is a very concerning one, to say the least. We are seeing that a very dangerous and unstable government in the form of the Islamic Republic of Iran could possibly be producing and ready to field a nuclear weapon in an incredibly short amount of time, meaning that this could pose a massive risk for U.S. strategic interests within the region, and we could also see that it could start to destabilize not only U.S. interests, but really global interests, with a brand new rogue state being in the possession of a nuclear weapon, and also directly threatening the security of the Western interests inside of the Middle East, and also the United States directly, much like North Korea currently does with its own nuclear weapons. Going off of this, it seems to me that there may be a decent amount of people, we don't really know for sure, and Matthew is correct, there aren't a large amount of sponsors here, that may be behind the idea of using force against the Islamic Republic of Iran for threatening the national security of the United States. This is something we'll have to wait to see if it goes through. I'll have to be honest with y'all, we are not really sure if this will pass or whether this will be shot down inside the Senate alone.
Really, I'm kind of surprised that only one senator actually sponsored the bill, because to me, I know some people are going to say, well, it sounds a little bit extreme to declare war on Iran when nothing's really broken out just yet. But I've been making the point for a long time that if Iran's allowed to get nuclear weapons, then the entire game is going to be changed in the Middle East, where Iran is going to have the upper hand, and the United States and our allies like Israel are going to be on the defensive. And that is the worst case scenario in the Middle East, because Iran is very rogue. So I've been wondering, is anybody going to step up and actually say we need to take preemptive action against the Ayatollah and tell them that they cannot get nuclear weapons, and if they want to try to develop them and finalize it, then they're going to get invaded. So only one sponsor on the bill, so it's hard to tell how far this is going to get, like I said, but still, I hope it gets somewhere, or at least they have a good debate about it, because this is something that needs to be discussed.
And it is something that does need to be discussed. Once again, I want to make it very clear that we are not taking a political side, promoting or condemning specific political groups, but I do want to bring it forward to y'all that there is an actual resolution inside of the Senate right now that is a formal declaration of war. If it was to be voted on and approved by the Senate, then voted on and approved by the House of Representatives, the president was then to authorize it, it would become law, and that would mean that we have an official declaration of war against the Islamic Republic of Iran. I know many people are going to be saying that this doesn't say declaration of war in the name of the resolution or the bill, whatever you would like to call it. That would be a bit of a misnomer that they ever say declaration of war. A joint resolution to authorize the use of the United States Armed Forces against a country is a bill that is a declaration of war. You don't ever say, let's move forward a bill to allow our army to obliterate another country, but this isn't a declaration of war. This is quite clearly a declaration of war against the Islamic Republic of Iran in the form of a bill, and that is what it is supposed to be going towards. Another thing that I'd like to point out is that this is incredibly rare. In fact, this is a situation that we have not really seen anywhere in recent U.S. history, because since the Second World War, there has never been an official declaration of war that has been voted on and approved by the Congress. Usually it is through executive, I believe, what is it called, man? The executive privilege or something along those lines.
Executive order?
Not executive order. It's some sort of executive privilege or something like that, where the Congress allows for a war to begin, but they don't vote on it, so that way we don't lose the element of surprise. I forgot what the specific...
That's the president's sort of privilege of war powers. They can put this out there, but they can't declare war. That's only on Congress for that.
So there we have it. Thank you for explaining that really quickly. So since the Second World War, that has always been the case with the United States getting involved in an armed conflict. So this is actually incredibly rare. We don't really know where this will be going at the moment, whether it'll get shot down or not, but still a fairly interesting... Go ahead.
Also, one other thing I just noticed, I actually just noticed this in a moment. Sort of tricky wording. I don't know if this was intentional or what, but it says a joint resolution to authorize the use of force, not to necessarily send the forces in, but simply to authorize it. The catch with that is the president of the United States is the commander in chief. So even though he's authorized to use the force, if this bill is passed, it's ultimately down to POTUS to actually make the order to actually send the troops over. So like some people were pointing out, this is not a declaration of war necessarily. It's more of an authorization. So I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it seems like actually it might depend on the president making the final order to actually send forces in based on the wording on this.
That is an interesting thing to point out there, and we'll have to see how this actually starts to evolve, if it makes it anywhere. We are assuming that it may actually have a little bit of consideration, possibly. We're not entirely sure at the moment, and we don't want to make it sound as though this is going to go through, this isn't going to go through, but it is something that actually is in the Senate currently, which is a very, very interesting development if we've ever seen one. And so with that, I hope that does address the side of the United States Congress fairly well and what's going on in the Congress at the moment, because it looks as though we may have the fledgling beginnings of the United States possibly moving towards some form of armed intervention inside the Middle East, although we're not sure at all, and I can't really give you all any sort of assuredness here whether they'll get shot down or approved, how much support there really is for that in the Congress as a whole and also within the office of the president. So we'll be waiting to see how that unfolds. But nevertheless, we have been able to hear from other sources in the region, for example, the Houthis inside of Western Yemen, that this night will go down in history. And currently, interestingly enough, this was published right at the beginning of nightfall in the Middle East. It is almost the break of dawn in the Middle East right now, and it has not really been a night that has gone down in history just yet. We have not seen any missiles fired, we have not seen any drones launched, but it does seem as though that the Houthis, the Iranians, and all of their proxies are on board the idea that major actions are going to be taken very soon. And we do understand that those major actions are only a moment around the corner. The Iranians and their proxies are doing almost the exact same buildup that they did back when the attack occurred during April, that we saw that ended up being incredibly large. And it does appear that once again, at least on the diplomatic statements end, they are doing the same things all over again. We also got to see that within Lebanon, the Israelis were conducting some incredibly harsh and very heavy airstrikes against Hezbollah forces within the southern areas of the country, and also all the way within the northern areas as well. We were able to see that within the area of the southern area of Lebanon, towards the west, towards Tyre, we were able to see more airstrikes being conducted on Hezbollah forces in this clip right here. And when I say airstrikes, we know that this is a very quintessential Israeli airstrike, because it used about the biggest bomb available. Right there. That's a pretty big one. That's one of those big papas right there.
Hello?
Hello?
Man, it's always like 2,000 pounds plus when they drop a bomb on these places. Like, never anything less.
Man, I'm telling you what, man, they always drop the big ones. But nevertheless, a lot of people have actually been talking while we're watching the Israelis still conducting preparatory airstrikes against Hezbollah forces in southern Lebanon. A lot of people have heard that Iran stated that they will attack Israel and targets abroad, which is something that the Israeli government has pointed out and noted recently, that they believe this attack is not only going to be targeting Israel, but is practically going to be targeting Jews as a whole throughout the entirety of the world. And a lot of people are wondering, is Iran trying to start a full-blown regional war with these kinds of massive and dangerous actions, or are they trying to go for just a little more so a terrorism against the state of Israel? That's a good way to put it, although that English is heavily butchered right there. But a lot of people are believing that it's somewhere in between Israel wanting to start a regional war and Iran just wanting to terrorize the Israelis, one or the other. But a lot of people have been throwing in their inputs and their opinions on this. And Matthew, what are people thinking about the Iranian actions, and what are you thinking about? Do you think that they're actually trying to scale this up into a full-blown regional war, or just try and terrorize the Israelis?
All right, so after we heard today that not only does Iran want to actually attack Israeli soil and the people, not only military targets, but also civilian targets as well, we're now hearing from Israel that, Iran's apparently wanting to attack other targets around the world that are connected somehow to the Israeli government. So they're expanding the scope quite significantly here. So 47% said yes, Iran wants to have a regional war, while 27% said no, Iran simply wants to terrorize Israel, and 16% said it seems like a combo of both. And for me, it sounds like, at least in my opinion, that Iran is hell-bent on causing a regional war. All their actions suggest that they want to escalate to the extreme and to the maximum. They're very upset about the twin assassinations that were conducted on the Hamas leader and also the other leader as well. So it sounds to me like they're wanting to take this thing to the max. And it sounds like nobody can really talk them out of it because the IRGC is rejecting all phone calls from, for example, the United States, who's still trying to manage escalation even during all this chaos that's breaking out and also the attacks on Israel. There's still talks of peace in the background, which, it's worth a try, but probably not going to get anywhere. But Iran is not being able to be talked out of this. So Israel's left with basically trying to destroy Iran if they get attacked. So to me, it looks like it's heading toward a regional war. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, Iran certainly does want a regional war to begin, and I think for some reason they believe that they would actually have a fair chance at actually defeating the Israelis in this upcoming conflict, and that's why they're trying to do every action they can, or at least conduct every action possible, to try and draw out the Israelis into a full-blown conventional war, hopefully expect that there wouldn't be a large amount of Western support, and then try and defeat Israel over a prolonged conflict in the area. That's what I'm expecting at the moment, based off of the Iranian actions, because it seems as though they are going overboard at the moment with their preparations, and also with the statements that they're making. It was very clear off of Iranian statements that they probably are going to be attacking Jewish citizens or Israeli citizens abroad, or really Israeli Jewish citizens abroad, from what we understand, and not only inside of Israel itself. Although, in some of those instances, some of those Jewish Israeli citizens may be dual citizens, and so conducting attacks in foreign countries, like, say, in a European nation or the United States, may actually draw those countries to be involved in the conventional war as well within the Middle East, and that would start to tip the balance of power against Iran massively, and most likely see them come out of this in a blistering defeat if that was to occur. But still, nevertheless, it does seem as though they are trying to escalate this into a regional war, and at the exact same time, it does appear that the Israeli armed forces are already operating off of this mindset, as we saw more airstrikes occurring within the area of southern Lebanon today. According to the information that we have, new Israeli airstrikes in the Bekaa Valley in eastern Lebanon were occurring just hours ago, according to Al Mayadeen news agency within the area of Lebanon. It does seem as though there is actually a decent amount of airstrikes happening in the area. We are not getting a lot of reports or information on these from the ground. We were able to get one clip earlier, but still it sounds as though there are several others that were occurring today, possibly on likely Hezbollah strongholds, and trying to knock them out, so that way if there was an upcoming attack by Hezbollah into Israel, or the Israeli ground invasion begins, those Hezbollah forces will be greatly weakened and will not be at peak combat effectiveness. Moving on into the area around Erbil in northern Lebanon, we were also able to see that the Israelis conducted an airstrike on the border crossing in between Syria and Lebanon. We didn't actually get to see the airstrike happen, but we did get to see the aftermath, which did prove that the Israelis did strike this area and conduct a significant amount of damage. We see them looking around here and showing the damage. And we see everyone filming it. Everyone likes to film it and get that little bit of video documentation, but still very interesting to point out that there are a decent amount of Israeli airstrikes happening pretty much through the entirety of Lebanon, all the way from its very southern regions just south of Tyre, and all the way north and up into the area around the city of Erbil, one of the most northernmost cities in this area of Lebanon. Meanwhile, we also got to hear of Syrian airfields being targeted not that far from the northern Lebanese border either. And we were able to see the flash and the report of these explosions within this area as well.
Pretty big ones.
Yeah, they're pretty freaking big.
Also, do you think these are the preemptive strikes which they've been sort of rumoring yet? Because I thought that maybe preemptive strikes were going to be on Iran directly, like knocking out some of their systems, but could this be preemptive strikes on the proxy forces to sort of knock out their ability to strike Israel in the future?
It may be, but if this is what they're considering preemptive strikes, it's actually considerably light compared to the historical sense of an Israeli preemptive strike, because during the Six-Day War, the Israelis knocked out, I believe it was a third or half of the Egyptian Air Force on the first day of the conflict. So if this is what they're calling preemptive strikes in the modern day, it's a lot more scaled back than Israeli preemptive strikes of times since past. But moving on from that area and down into southern Lebanon, we did get to hear that apparently, according to a Hezbollah source, the attacks are going to be pretty different compared to last time. And this is what they had to say. One of the difference between the upcoming operation and Sadiq's promise, which was the attack in April, is that it will be multi-staged, just contrary to the honest promise that after it was finished in the morning, it was announced that the operation was over from our point of view. Contrary to Sadiq's promise, which was a special emphasis on not shifting operations to conflict, this time, however, preparations have finally been made for a series of skirmishes of at least 3 days in length, meaning that whatever this opening Iranian action will be, if they start it off, it is going to be pretty much 3 days of hell in the Middle East, as they are going to be firing absolutely everything they have towards Israel during those 3 days, and they're also going to be conducting ground operations within the northern Israeli border for a minimum of 3 days. It will most likely drag on to be a lot longer, as the Israeli forces would stabilize the situation in northern Israel and then order a counterattack, pushing into southern Lebanon and beginning the ground invasion into their country. So going off of that, it does sound as though, from what we're understanding from every source around, a war is beginning in the Middle East. It pretty much is happening at this moment. It is just the countdown to the actual beginning of hostilities, and then we'll be seeing how this war unfolds from this point forward. But the region has...
And also, not only is Iran very angry because of these assassinations which recently happened, they were already angry to begin with, not to get confused whatsoever, but now they're also paranoid because the way the guy got assassinated in Tehran, now that we're finding out that apparently Israel went out and recruited a couple of Iranian guys to go into that room and plant the bomb, which took out the Hamas leader, that has everybody in Tehran very paranoid. So not only are they unstable as a government, they're also very angry and they're also paranoid. That's a bad combo. Because now they're looking at literally everybody in their top command and they're thinking, is that the guy who like sort of worked with the Israelis to mess up? It could be. So all the way around, like their decision making is about to be really erratic more than usual because of all those factors.
I would agree with that completely. It is going to be really rough going on in the future. And also, on top of that, we are dealing with probably the most freaked out Iranian government in any kind of scenario we could be dealing with at this moment. And so hopefully the Israelis will be able to operate this situation well, and we don't see that the Iranians freak out a little bit too much. But moving on down into the area around Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, we were able to hear that Israel does believe that the attacks will be conducted abroad. And according to the direct statement that they gave to CBS News, that while Israel had successfully avoided significant impact from Iran's April 13th attack, this time around Israel is anticipating a more aggressive retaliation, one that could go even beyond Israeli territory and target Israeli assets abroad. Asked what Israel is expecting Tehran's response will be, another Israeli official told CBS News that's for Iran to decide. And so it does appear that they are, at the moment, kind of waiting on the Iranians to conduct some sort of an action. It seems as though the United States has pressured Israel enough that they're not going all in on preemptive actions against Iran and its proxies, and it looks as though they are still going to be waiting for the attack to come. In my personal opinion, that is a bit of a bad idea, considering that war is already on the horizon. Better conduct a preemptive attack than wait for them to attack, because who knows, the attack could succeed, and then things are a lot more different, at least in their in the big picture that we're getting at that point, than they are right now. Meanwhile, we also got to see that the evacuation of diplomats was happening. The Swedish diplomatic team to Lebanon today actually boarded up the windows of their embassy, like literally, like it was a cartoon. Like they put like plywood up on the windows. They packed up the U-Haul and they literally just drove out of there to a plane and then left. The U.S. diplomatic team did it a little bit differently. They just closed up shop and they brought over a Army priority air transport, pretty much a Learjet, loaded everyone up on the Learjet, and they're flying back to the United States at this moment. So it looks as though we're getting our diplomatic teams out of there as well, which is still giving us a very clear indication that war is coming to the area. As diplomatic teams leaving is usually what happens when everyone has a very strong tip-off that a conflict is going to be happening. Usually we don't pack up these diplomatic teams. It's best for them to continue operations for as long as possible, but if a situation becomes incredibly dangerous, we pack them up and we move them out. There are very rare instances where that did not happen. And those are exceptions rather than the norm. But moving on.
It's like the Wild West out here, man. It's like they were told to like get their crap, pack it up, and get out of Dodge quick because they like literally some of these people in these embassies are literally, like you said, packing their crap up, locking the door, and running like that fast. And also considering the fact that we're hearing airlines even canceling and shutting down more flights as the hours go by, they're actually canceling flights all the way out to October. So that tells a lot as well. This could be a very prolonged fight, considering that these airlines, which probably get some more inside information than we do and the public, they're canceling for months out. So not good. Like all the signs are once again lining up to show that something major is about to go down.
Man, the embassies in Lebanon and Israel, man, heard this. And they're like, we got to get the hell out of here. We're like, it's going to be a cowboy shootout. But nevertheless, everyone is packing up and leaving. At least the diplomatic teams are. And so this is showing us that they are once again getting orders from their governments, like the U.S. government. Things are getting bad. Y'all need to pack up immediately and leave because we can't risk our diplomatic teams getting injured or killed overseas. So pack up now and let us all leave. And that's what everyone's doing at the moment. Sweden's done that. I believe the Germans have done that. We've done that. The French have done that. Everyone's doing it at this point. Everyone's getting their people out of there. And so it is once again giving us a very clear indication that war is here. It's just a matter of waiting at this point. And we don't really know when it's going to happen because we were saying that it was going to be within 72 hours. And now 48 hours have passed, meaning that there is only 24 hours left in the original timetable that was issued by the U.S. government for the Iranians to conduct their attack against the state of Israel. To be entirely honest with y'all, I don't think it's going to be happening during the next 24 hours. That's just me. Usually the attacks are not that predictable. I would expect that it's probably going to be 3 days after the end of the 72-hour period that we've been waiting through at this moment, or it may even be a little bit later than that. Because while they are hyping it up a lot, the Iranians still want to have some form of an element of surprise, and they're probably going to be waiting until after this timetable ends, so that way they can then try and conduct the attack and, in their minds, have some form of an element of surprise. But still, with that, I hope that does address that little bit of info fairly well from the Middle East. And still, I've got to say, this is probably one of the most tense and dangerous situations that we've seen in the area. Very rarely do we see a situation like this in the Middle East. Well, actually, that's a little bit of an understatement. We see this a lot usually, but it's over a very long period of time of usually decades. Like the past 2 decades, we've seen that there has been a lot of situations like this, but usually not in between Israel and Iran. A full-on, almost blow-to-blow situation like this in between Israel and Iran has not happened for decades, from what I understand, at least off of my historical understanding, and it is something that we could see devolve into a full-blown regional war, and maybe even possibly a major world war, as a lot of major powers have a lot of national interests that intersect within the Middle East, and a lot of them have a major bit of investment in the area. The Chinese are growing their investment in the Middle East currently. The Russians are attempting to exert some form of influence over the Middle East, although it's very, very light, very minimal at best. And the United States, of course, is the major power in the Middle East at the moment that controls an incredibly large sphere within this area. But while all of this was going on, something that y'all may not know, it was a little obscure thing that happened today, was that there was a flood that happened in North Korea. This is something that happens here and there in North Korea. The North Koreans have not really gotten flood control down. Really, no one in the world gets flood control down. It's a disaster. It happens. People have to recover from it. But today, a flood happened, and Kim Jong-un went out to inspect it. And this was something that was very interesting, because very rarely do we see Kim Jong-un descend the ivory palace, in a sense, to try and get out there and check out what kind of damage is actually being inflicted upon the Korean citizenry within North Korea. We were actually able to see a little bit of this today in a video that was published by the North Korean news agency, where we saw that Kim Jong-un was on board a semi-inflatable raft with an outboard motor on it, pretty much a dinghy, and they were riding around in the floodplain on the dinghy. The footage that unfolded beyond that point was comedic genius, and we have now been able to hear that the boat driver and the tree have both been executed for actions against the state. Here is the clip.
Oh, it's at the building.
Oh! Careened into
no,
the
stop.
tree!
Oh
Oh!
no! Oh no, he's in the weeds.
And before the video even ended, Kim Jong-un looks back and he points, shoot that man. Like
Man, I'm telling you what, that was literally probably the boat driver's last like ever job assignment ever. Like
Oh my,
he's probably over after this.
oh my lord, man, that is wild. I cannot believe this. And they put it on TV. Like they didn't edit this out.
Man,
They put it on TV.
man, it was so goofy. It's like they rammed like into this building. Like you see the guy in the white jacket right here trying to push off the building in the first part of the video. Then they run him into the branches and then they smash a stump. And the first thing Kim Jong Un was worried about was his hair. He was trying to flick his hair back. He wasn't worried about nothing else. It's just like a whole comedy routine.
Dude, it was a huge comedy trip. Look at this. Look, he
But
pushed
he
off the
pushed off
building. And also another thing I want to point out, y'all, like if y'all watching in the clip, this is why they careened over into that tree. You can see that the floodwaters are going right to left on screen, so it's dragging the raft because the pilot isn't really accounting for the shift or really the drift that this boat is going to be taking when it actually gets out there into the full-on floodwaters. So they just went straight into the tree, and he didn't overcorrect or really correct at all. He just went straight into the tree. So check this out. Look. You see the waters are immediately dragging them left. Disaster is coming at this point. He pulls a hard right. At this point, it's just way too late. And also the currents are a little bit too strong for the kind of power he's putting in. So they just slam right into the tree.
Could you imagine if this flung Kim Jong-un off the boat and into the nasty floodwater? Like, that would have been, like, execution for the whole government then.
Oh my goodness, dude. They would have literally shot them on the spot. Like, no waiting, no trial, instant execution. But man, goodness gracious, man. Did you see that boiler? Like, goodness gracious, look at that. Goodness,
man. He's been putting on some weight.
Man, I'm telling you what, man, you could put that shit down in a boat and you could run that thing. Like, you could run the Ever Given with a boiler like that, man. Talk about, they should have had his butt on the back of the raft. With that kind of steam pressure in that thing, you could get that thing going. Like, it would be rolling, man. But still, pretty wild to see. I mean, pretty nuts. You don't see this kind of stuff on Korean TV a lot, any kind of a mess up like that. So to see one, it's pretty wild. And we had to make sure to point that out just a little bit because we get to laugh at probably one of the most brutal dictators in the world at the moment. But moving on from that, and also moving on from the area of East Asia, we do have to revisit the Middle East for just a quick moment because a lot of us were kind of quickly skirting over for a second the Russian Il-76 that arrived in Tehran today, which we were able to track on flight radar and confirm that an Il-76 of a private company did land inside of Tehran, and it was a very interesting occurrence considering what's going on right now. A lot of people are saying that the Russians may be trying to supply the Iranians with some last-minute weaponry of some sort. We're not entirely sure what that kind of weaponry may be, but they may be trying to provide it through this Il-76 charter flight. But a lot of people are wondering what is going on with that. And some people are saying, a lot of people are actually saying, that Russia is arming Iran to cause a regional war. Others are saying that it seems nefarious. It may be that they're evacuating their diplomats from Iran, and it may also be that they're arming the Russians, and others are saying that the Russians are only evacuating their diplomats, and that's it. There's nothing nefarious to it, no bones about it. This isn't anything too serious or too questionable. Leave it where it is, and it's nothing to really look into any further. But a lot of people have been throwing in their opinions on this. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this Il-76 flight? Do they think that they're providing arms to the Iranians, or do they think they're evacuating diplomats? And what are you thinking about it?
So it looks like about 60% of the audience said Russia is trying to arm Iran to cause a war, while 18% said, it kind of seems nefarious, but maybe it's both causing the war and also evacuating the diplomats. And only 14% said they're only trying to get the diplomats out. And for me, I'm actually with the 18%. I think it's probably both of them because the aircraft that went there, the Il-76, it's operated by a company called Gelix Airlines in Russia, and their whole operation specializes in arms transportation. And it's really ironic that right in the beginning of a major regional war breaking out, that Russia is sending down an arms transport plane right to the capital. To me, that seems a little bit too coincidental. They're probably bringing down some sort of ammunition, maybe artillery or something like that, to give to the the Iranians. But at the same time, they also want to get their diplomats out because they don't want them to get killed there either, would be my assumption. So I'm with the 18%. It's probably both. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be, in my honest opinion, I would have to be within that category as well. The Russians are probably looking at the Middle East and they're going, oh damn, you're going pretty bad. Get them out of there. And so they're trying to get their diplomatic team out of there and maybe dropping off weapons when the plane lands and then putting the diplomatic team on the plane and then flying them back. So I would also have to go with the 18% as well. It seems nefarious. It might be that they're evacuating their diplomats and they're also supplying weapons to the Iranians for some reason in a one-off airplane shipment to Iran when they could just railroad it in through Azerbaijan, or they could ship it in through the Caspian Sea. But they may be supplying some quick little, like, I guess you could say care package weapons to the Iranians in the IL-76, possibly. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are now going to be moving on from the Middle East, which is very eastern and middle today. I will say that for certain, without a doubt. And we're now going to be moving on up into the area of Ukraine, or Eastern Europe, which is very eastern, and it's also in Europe. But we're going to be covering all of this news as well in large form, because there was a lot of major news that happened in Ukraine today that we weren't even able to include in the title, because there was so much breaking news happening everywhere. And we had a lot going on in the Middle East, like we had loads, and I hope we were able to cover that well, and I hope everyone's getting a good idea of what the picture is looking like as of today. But we also have a lot that came out of Ukraine. A major attack on Morozovsk, Ukrainian naval drones attacking Sevastopol or some port along the Crimean Peninsula again. We also got to see that the Ukrainians knocked out some electronic warfare systems in Belgorod. We also got to see a whole bunch of interesting stuff going on down at Bakhmut and Avdiivka, or really the Pokrovsk front at this point. And also a whole bunch of other wild stuff too, like some clips that we never really get to see. They're very rare as far as this war goes. But before we get into all of that, we do have a couple of interesting questions to talk about. Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat of the night, we have a very generous $100 donation from Richard Ager, and thank you very much, Richard, for always supporting the channel, and that is massive support, and we do appreciate it indeed. He said, I love your work, gents, and your resilience and consistency, and I don't have any questions for now, and please take one from the chat. And also, thank you for the kind words, Richard, and also, the Enforcer will tell you, we've been literally waiting to go live all day long if something broke out. We've been watching Twitter and also all of our sources like a hawk, so we've been ready to jump into this thing, and I'm glad you like the consistency with that as well, because we put a ton of work into it, and it means a lot to hear that. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the massive, incredible support, Richard Ager, and helping this channel to keep on running. Thank you so much for loving the work. We sacrifice a little bit, not a lot. Like, in reality, it's not really that much, but we sacrifice a little bit every once in a while behind the scenes. Like, for example, over the past few days, we've pretty much gotten out nowhere and done nothing. We've literally been sitting at our computers all day, tracking all of the news of what's going on in the Middle East and waiting for an actual conflict to break out. At this point, it really is just a matter of waiting, and so we are ready at any given time of the day for this conflict to begin, and once it begins, we are going to be covering it just like we've been covering the war in Ukraine, with as much detail as we possibly can. There's just so much going on out there, and we would hate to miss it. We would hate for all of y'all to miss it as well, as far as the news coverage goes, because I know a lot of people, like you, Richard Ager, probably count on this channel as a primary source of news these days, and we want to make sure to try and hit on everything we can that is major and important out there in the world, and there is so much out there that is like that these days. But still, thank you so much once again for that massive support. Thank you for enjoying the resilience and the consistency. We love to do this. This is our primary job. And while we have been incredibly resilient and persistent, I do want to throw it out there to y'all. We are throwing around an idea in the background that during a major event here in the United States, which is coming up soon. Many of y'all saw the one that happened for the other group a while ago. There's another one coming up here soon. We may possibly take that as a break, if nothing too major is going on, to actually have a vacation. We haven't had one in years, and so I was like, that might be a good time, because moments like those where everyone's probably going to be off watching something else, which it's a convention. All of y'all know what I'm talking about. It's a convention that's coming up for a certain group in America, and a lot of people are probably going to be watching that just like they were watching the other one that happened a little while ago, we were like, that might be a good time, considering that a lot of people will be off watching that, for us to actually get a little bit of a breather and then get back to working for another 2 or 3 years, and then we'll take another break again. But we don't know if we're doing that for certain at this point. We're just kind of throwing around the idea, and if anything too big or too major happens, then we're canceling all of those plans, and we're going to be sitting right here and covering that news as it's coming out, because we can't really go mobile. Matthew can go mobile, but I cannot go mobile. But still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. At least give you all a little bit of a heads up. We're not entirely dedicated to that plan at the moment. So if we are dedicated to the plan, we're going to be mentioning that pretty much every single night leading up to the day of, to let everyone know what's going to be happening, so y'all aren't expecting live streams those days. But at the same time, for now, expect that there will be live streams during that time, because we expect that there probably will be really big news, and there's a higher chance we'll be on air then instead of off air and doing something else. But still, a huge thank you so much once again for support, Richard Agur. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And we will make sure to get a question from the chat in honor of you. And so what do we got in the live chat, Matthew? Sponsored by Richard Agur.
And this one goes to C Cubed, who says, do you think it's possible that Russia delivered nuclear warheads on that plane on the IL-76 tonight?
And that is a very interesting question. I would say probably not. Iran is not in the same situation as Belarus is. Belarus is a dictatorial regime run by Lukashenko, but it's one that is heavily aligned and connected to the Russian Federation, and so sending nuclear weapons into Belarus isn't as big of a gamble as sending them into Iran. And while Iran is more so Russian-aligned than anything right now, we do have to remember that it is a radical Islamic government, which means that they are going to be against the Russian Federation in the long run. Kind of like how the Mujahideen was American-aligned during the Soviet-Afghan War, and then post-war they became very anti-American and ended up harboring some terrorists like Osama bin Laden. And so they do have to remember that going forward. So I would have a feeling that they would not be putting nuclear weapons inside of Iran at this moment, because it would be a very dangerous gamble to make, and also who's to say that they would ever be able to get them back out of Iran if the diplomatic situation in between the two started to deteriorate. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat fairly well, at least in my opinion, and at least what I can work off of. And with that, we are on to the next, but a huge thank you so much once again, Richard Agur, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. We wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And I've got to thank you massively once again for enjoying this channel a great deal, enjoying our consistency, and helping us to be able to keep doing this as a job, so that way we can keep staying as reliable and consistent as we have been for almost 900 days. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Plant Lady, who's also a longtime channel viewer as well, who puts in a very generous $50 donation. And thank you very much, Plant Lady, once again. They said, excuse me, they said, hello to my favorite enforcers. And I'm glad to be on the live stream tonight. And y'all have the best news overall, and keep up the good work. And to take a question from the chat. And also, long live the Marmot Club.
Hey, and long live that Marmot Club, baby! And I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, Plant Lady, and helping this channel to keep on running. Thank you so much for saying that we're your favorites. Y'all are our favorites. The entirety of the Lee Spring Army is our favorite, and we love to get to talk to y'all every single day and tell you all the news. It is one of our highlights of the day, really. And also, on top of that, I gotta say, thank you so much for being glad to be on the live stream tonight. I love to hear it. And also, thank you for saying we have the best news overall. We try so hard to make sure that our news is accurate, that it's covering the major events, that it's interpreting them and trying to paint them into a bigger picture that everyone can understand, and one that's fairly logical and reasonable. And I'm so glad that people really do enjoy that. It speaks volumes when this channel is one of the top 100 most viewed live streams in America every single night. YouTube's been like stumping our numbers for some reason lately. I don't know why, because last night y'all may remember that we got up to, I think, a peak of 7,000 viewers. It was like 6 point something. I think it was actually 6 point something. And then YouTube updated today, and I want to show y'all this for proof. I have to show y'all this because some people, they don't believe us. They go, oh, where are the numbers? We don't believe you. And I'm going to show y'all because y'all will believe me. We can see right here. Oh, let me take that one. Here we go. That was our live stream viewership last night, 9,134. So we actually are in the top 100 live streams in America pretty much every single night. And it's crazy to think that many people watch. Like, that many people are actually watching tonight, because we've gotten 65,000 views in the first hour, which is even more than what we got last night with 9,000 viewers on, which is freaking bizarre. It's crazy to think that we've gotten to that level where we're one of really the biggest voices in news, not just in the Ukraine war segment, but really in the world news segment. And we are entirely honored to be able to be put into that position. It took a decent amount of hard work, a decent amount of time, a decent amount of effort, days without vacation, days where we just sat here and literally paid attention to what was going on around the world every single minute, waiting for something to happen. But nevertheless, I would have never had it any other way. Folks like you, Plant Lady, with the incredibly kind words that you say, make all of this worthwhile, make all of the work and effort that we put into reporting the news a thing that we can really appreciate and take pride in. And I gotta thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running and just showering us with incredibly kind words. That is very nice of you, and I gotta say I appreciate that massively. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. We will make sure to take a question from the chat, and long live the Marmot Club. And after we get that live chat question, I think we will throw the Marmot up on screen. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so the live chat question goes to King in the North, who says, will Israel/NATO launch a preemptive strike, knocking out Iran's capability to attack Israel?
Sadly, I do not think that they are going to be doing anything like that. The United States, even today, from what we can say, and of course I have to say this in a very neutral wordage, because the people who are involved in the government are always political figures, but we heard today that apparently the President of the United States called up the leader of Israel, which is Benjamin Netanyahu, and was pressuring him massively to make a peace deal and make it now, even with everything that's going on, even with all the wheels in motion where a war is about to be happening literally within hours right now. There was still a demand that nothing happens, and I wouldn't even call it appeasement at this point. I would just call it defeatism prevails in the Middle East. We are not even wanting to try to carry through with a defense, it seems. It seems as though we are just wanting to give up completely. And so going off of that, I don't know what that loud noise, I don't know if you heard that, Matthew. You sound like a coin hitting the bottom of a metal pipe over here. But beyond that, I would have to say that in my opinion, it doesn't seem as though we'll be conducting any preemptive strikes on Iran. Now, maybe Israel will, but if they do, it's going to be entirely a one-off thing on their own. They're not going to be involved with any other coalition countries from the Western world. It's going to be entirely Israel's affair if they start to conduct strikes inside of Iran. And we've also made it very clear to them that if they do conduct preemptive strikes, they're entirely on their own from that point forward, which it seems to me, speaking on my own perspective on this and in talking about Western interests as a whole, that isn't really within the West's interest to tell our allies that are about to get involved in a full-blown conventional war, whether they want to or not at this point, that if you end up taking the initiative, you're on your own, pal. That seems to me to be a very weak sign, because it shows that this is how everything will go from this point forward. Bad country provokes good country decides, instead of waiting for them to attack, we're going to attack them first, and then we go, okay, well, maybe you're not the one who attacked first, but you're on your own if you preemptively strike them. That seems to me to be a really weak kind of a statement that the United States is making, and I'm not a big fan of that at all. I believe that if our allies, any of them in the Middle East, it's not just Israel, it's Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and any other nation as well, even the SDF in Syria, if they want to go on the offensive for some reason because they see an imminent threat that is coming around the corner and it's going to happen whether they wanted to or not, I am all behind supporting them through and through, because at that point, I don't know what it is. I'll tell you this. I don't know what it is with people in the world, because it's not just Americans or people inside the government that do this. It's everyone in the world. They want to live in like a fantasy land where they can just wish for things to be different and it's going to be different. Like the United States going, we want peace in the Middle East. There is no peace in the Middle East right now. It's not going to happen. And just because you want it to happen, it's not going to happen. We are on a totally different path right now. Iranian-backed proxies attacked Israel back in October of last year. That started off a full-blown conflict in the Gaza Strip. That was unavoidable at that point because there had to have been a response for the butchering of 2,500 Israeli citizens and the capture of thousands more that were taken hostage. There had to have been a response, so we should have been behind Israel completely in that situation. And then moving on from there, then Hezbollah started to attack Israel. Israel wants to respond to those attacks. Our hands are kind of tied. It is really a defensive action in the bigger picture. And so instead of trying to make them back off and not do what would be pretty much an inevitable action on Israel's end to try and stop further aggressions, we try and tell them to back off and make them live in a fantasy land where the Middle East is a peaceful land at the moment. It's not. It's a war-stricken area. It is filled with proxy forces that are anti-Western and they're anti-American. And for that reason, we should be behind our allies when they say things like, we don't like what's going on. We want to take action to stop it. Like if Saudi Arabia tomorrow said, we are tired of the Houthis firing off rockets that land within this southern area right here on the western coast of Saudi Arabia, we are going to invade Western Yemen and we are going to crush the Houthis. I would say, as the United States, all for it. We will also provide defensive measures for you as well, and any kind of support, intelligence support, and maybe even material support in the form of the Air Force for air support that would be necessary to help you persecute persecute that objective. We would be entirely behind that because not only is it supporting Saudi interests by getting rid of the Houthis, which are strongly anti-Saudi, if y'all don't know, they're also anti-American, and they're attacking international shipping interests in the Red Sea currently. So why not back up our ally in the area that's going to do all the heavy lifting and the work for us and them and fix the problem and tie off a loose end? It sounds to me to be a win-win, and so I'm not at all against supporting our allies in the area that want to improve their situation and in the end improve ours. That would be my answer.
Also, another thing as well is the U.S. really needs to stop giving away our game plans. It's totally understandable if the U.S. wants to tell an ally, we don't really like what you're doing, you need to maybe consider backing off. But the catch is, what the U.S. just did is they went out in the public and told the press this, so Iran and Hamas and all the other terror groups are going to hear it. They said that this time, we're going to back up Israel, we're going to protect them, but next time this happens, though, we're going to abandon Israel. That's the statement that was said in the press. So what Hamas might do is attack Israel this one time right here, let that pass, and then realize, hey, the U.S. said they're going to abandon Israel the second time, so we'll be good to go. Like, if we can amass enough missiles, the third time's going to be a charm. And I don't know why we'd come out and say that in the public. Like, keep that behind closed doors. I thought that was common sense. But apparently it's not so common anymore because we're telling the enemy what our game plan is.
And also another thing, because I got to be fair here, and I am talking about the current U.S. government, and there is the possibility there will be a new government in the future. But one thing I heard, I don't know if you heard this recently, Matthew, because I was actually listening to some interviews today because I was trying to figure out where in the world is the United States going to be going in the future everywhere. You know, like what is our foreign policy going to be shaping into? And then I heard from the other side, you know, the side that currently isn't president, we would have made the Iranians happy. What? It's like, no. It's like they're an enemy of the United States. There shouldn't be any. I'm not a fan of appeasement. All right. I don't know what it is with everyone in America wanting to conduct some levels and elements of appeasement, but I'm not for that. That is an enemy of the United States. And while we will end up having to possibly make a compromise here and there to avoid unnecessary bloodshed, we shouldn't be going to the point of appeasing people. You know, because what I heard, to speak about it on a very broad sense, is that the other side said, we wouldn't have done anything to Iran. We would have allowed them to do whatever they want as long as they couldn't make a nuke. They're going to make a nuke. It's like, it doesn't matter what you want them to do. They are hell-bent on making one. Like, that's what I've said in the past days ago to all of y'all. I know y'all were here to hear it. I said neither side did anything to stop Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. One of them said, we're going to just try and guide y'all to not making a nuclear weapon. And the other one just said, we're not doing a damn thing. We're just hoping y'all don't make a nuclear weapon. And then I'm hearing that again. Like, no one has an actual solution right now to dealing with the Iranians in an actual meaningful way that stops them from becoming a major terror in the region and a major threat to global security. No one is doing that.
And also simply saying, like, if you call up and say, I want peace right now and you better get peace, while literally Israel's being attacked from every corner around their country. And these people are chanting death to Israel. There's no like peace in their minds whatsoever. It's like we can't live in delusional world here. It's like everybody around Israel wants to kill them, and you can debate the merits of whatever side, but Israel's a sovereign country, just like Ukraine's a sovereign country. Why are we going to start supporting the terrorists and trying to tear down a sovereign country? Because wouldn't that be the same thing as supporting Russia trying to tear down Ukraine? That wouldn't make much sense. So you can't just snap your fingers and say peace. It doesn't work like that. Like I've said before, there are centuries of disagreement between these two factions right here, between Israel and also the terrorists. So you're not going to simply just back off of that by saying fix it.
And also, I just saw someone, Matthew, someone tried to force the political discussion. I'm gonna make sure to address it fairly and remain within our no politics rule. Someone said, "Oh, please, if you keep on with this, I'm gonna unsub because only so and so political party in America is responsible for this." No. It's every single one. Like that falls within my no politics rule because we are equally condemning both sides here. But it's both sides because just over the 2010s alone, we saw one group go, "Okay, the Iranians look like they're making a nuclear weapon, but let's give them some money." And also get some hostages released by pretty much paying the Iranians, which I don't really agree with that. That's a bad idea to give them money. It should be a fair exchange of prisoners or just no exchange at all. Americans putting themselves in stupid situations with Iran and getting arrested shouldn't be putting the government in a bad lurch like that. And so that decision shouldn't be made. And then we go, well, let's make a treaty with them where we just try and curb their nuclear development, which we know is happening. And we really can't guide too much. We're just going to try and guide them towards making peaceful nuclear technology instead of warlike nuclear technology, knowing that they hate us and they want us dead. And then the next group came in, because now y'all know the group I'm talking about there. So the next one came in, and then they went, to hell with that. We're just going to revoke the treaty. And we're not going to guide their nuclear development at all. We still know they're going to be making some form of nuclear technology, but we're not going to try and guide it towards being peaceful, which really means nothing. And now we're not doing anything, which means they are going to be making a nuclear weapon. And so then they sit on their asses. And then the next group comes in, which is the one we're currently in right now, and then they do nothing either. No one did anything to stop this. Like, if you look at this, no one did anything to stop this. It was absolutely ridiculous, the kind of foreign policy that was in place here from everyone. This is a major oversight. We are now dealing with an incredibly dangerous situation. They are not that far away from having a weapon of mass destruction, and now we're having to deal with the cards that we've been dealt. And this is the reality that we're living in. And either we do something rash and we stop them from getting some sort of a nuclear weapon, or we do nothing, and then they get a nuclear weapon, and then they're the DPRK of the Middle East, and they get to do really whatever they want, and we can't touch them because we're scared of getting someone else nuked in the Middle East, or we're scared of ourselves getting nuked once they get ICBM technology and MIRV technology like the North Koreans are now working on right now. And so I hope that does address that the best I can. And also, someone said in the chat, one of the recent groups in the 2010s kept Iran broke. Okay, here's my fair argument against why that really does not matter. It didn't matter for North Korea, did it? Like, North Korea, it was broke forever, and they still made nuclear weapons, even being broke. Like, if a country wants to make nuclear weapons, they're going to make them. It's a matter of intervening and stopping them before they can actually develop one. And unlike North Korea, which had China as a shield because of a defensive pact that they created during the Korean War, Iran has no shield. Like, the Russians are like a semi-shield, but I don't think the Russians will die on that hill protecting the Iranians, because they didn't do that at the beginning of the Cold War when the CIA overthrew the Iranian government and we installed the Shah in the 50s, and they also really didn't do anything to bolster up the Islamic Republic's government that much since then. So that is a hill that I don't think the Russians would ever die on. I think they'd leave that alone if we wanted to do something to them. And I think we should go in and we should conduct either surgical strikes against nuclear development facilities in Iran or something along those lines. Because if we do not, we're going to have another DPRK. I mean, because we can try and split the hairs all we want about they were poor, now they have money. That did not matter for North Korea. They still made a nuclear weapon. They're making more of them, and they're still dirt poor. They're still broke as hell. I mean, hell, right now they're starving, and somehow they're still making more nuclear warheads because they will find a way. A regime like that will find a way to do it. So if we do not actively get involved with armed intervention and stop them, they are going to make a nuke, whether they're broke, whether they're rich, or anything in between. They're going to make one. And so now we have to take the extremely harsh and rash action. It's the last option we have left, because no one else did anything in the meantime to truly try and stop this, of conducting some form of armed intervention against Iran to destroy their abilities to produce a weapon of mass destruction, or to actually go in, find any existing or possibly existing weapons of mass destruction and destroy them before they exist. Because otherwise we are going to be dealing with the worst situation that has ever been seen in the Middle East in its history. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. I had to put that out there because every time I talk about this, people always want to say, well, it's actually this side's fault or that side's fault. It's this side's fault because they removed themselves from the treaty, or it's that side's fault because they made the treaty and then they gave them money. It's everyone's fault, because if you look at it from a holistic perspective, no one actually did anything to stop them. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And I got to thank you so much once again, Plant Lady, for sponsoring that live chat and helping us to keep this channel running, so that way I could talk a little bit about what we're doing in the area and what's going on. And so with that, if you like the way I talk, folks, because I see a lot of people agreeing with me in the chat right now. If you like the way I talk, the way I cut things down from all of the stupid crap that goes on in America, talking about this stuff, and I just talk about it from a common sense perspective, not really taking one side or the other, but creating my own path and my own side to this whole thing. Vote for me for president in 2040, because this is the same thing you're going to be getting during that time. It will be the exact same. The situation will be different. The picture will be different. So by that point, everything I'm saying right now will be completely null and void, because we'll be so far in the future, that stuff will have been said and done, and it will have gone however it's gone. But if you vote for me for president in 2040, this is the exact same kind of thinking and troubleshooting that will be done around that time. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. But we do have a very interesting question before we move on into our last question of the segment. Do you think Israel is acting in purely self-defense? Or have they contributed to the conflict in a sense to be able to create this monster that we're now seeing developing in the area right now? And a lot of people have really thrown in some comments. This is actually a fairly split decision. While one of them is winning out over the other, it's a lot closer than I thought it would be. And Matthew, what are people thinking, and what are you thinking about that idea?
All right, so the highly contentious question. This is causing fights in the chat. Kind of expected, honestly, but we had to ask the question. 48% said Israel is purely self-defense right now, while 39% said Israel contributed to the conflict, and 4% said Israel is entirely at fault. And the option I would rule out right off the bat is Israel is entirely at fault. Israel is definitely not, but I will say this, though. It does take two to tango, and while I do support Israel 100% in defending their territory, I'm actually with the 40%. Israel has contributed to the conflict in some way, because there have been times when Israel could have tamped down things a little bit to try to lower the temperature, and they decided to take the hostile route. I'm not saying they're necessarily wrong, but they have contributed in some sense. And even though it's sort of gotten to the point where they're really justified right now because they're being attacked from literally every angle and they have to lash out, there have been times in the past where they could have probably tamped things down a bit, but they didn't. So I'm with the 40%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my honest opinion, I would have to be with the 40% as well. There are some actions that have been taken by Israel, and we have to talk about this fairly. There are some actions that have been taken by Israel in the past that have, of course, inflamed the rhetoric and kept it going. Really, to be honest, I think it would have turned out the same way, whether they did a lot or nothing, because we're kind of seeing that right now with America, making sure that Israel doesn't go all in on really, I guess you could say, taking provocative actions against Iran and its proxies, and it's still kind of going the same way. But if you want to talk about it fairly, both sides have contributed to the kind of tensions and the kind of problem that we're seeing right now. But nevertheless, going off of that, oh man, we got a Palestinian bot in here. Goodness gracious, see ya. But beyond that, moving on from that, I would have to say, regardless of who was actually orchestrating the rising tensions that we're seeing right now, it does not matter. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand about foreign policy. And I don't mean to talk about that in like a condescending way or say that in a condescending way, but it's very true. A lot of people look at things with countries like they're friends. And countries are not friends. Countries are an apparatus, and we have to view countries like that, like an institution or an apparatus or something along those lines. And while Israel may have had some contributory part in creating what we're seeing right now, and the kind of tensions and the ideology that exists in the area, at the same time, they are a pro-Western aligned country, and when it boils down to the bare basics of this conflict, it is forces that are against the West and forces that are for the West. And so we end up supporting the forces for the West, whether they ended up contributing to the conflict a little bit, they're the entire contributor to the conflict, or they didn't contribute at all. We still have to support them because they're a Western aligned country, and we really don't get a whole bunch of say in how that goes. And so I hope that does address that the best I can, because, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things, like, really thinking about, just to go through this a little bit more, that we could axe countries for. Like, there's loads. Like, we could axe Turkey right now, because they're doing stupid stuff, and they're saying stupid things. And they're in NATO, and they're also in an EU customs union. We could axe them. The EU could axe them, but we don't, because you don't really get to deal with countries like they're friends, and you get to not be friends and be friends the next day. You just kind of have to stick it with them and try and shift them around or move them around a little bit, at least ideologically, so that way they can still be on par or online, even if you're not really that big of a fan of them. Kind of like how Turkey and Hungary also had to relent on letting Sweden and Finland in, which they slowly did over time, but nevertheless they couldn't treat them like they were friends. Like, no, I disagree with them, I don't like them, and they eventually had to go, well, I don't really like some of what they do, like allowing Swedish citizens to burn the Quran as an extension of free speech, which was Turkey's big argument about letting Sweden into NATO, although NATO has nothing to do with religious ideology, so that's kind of a stupid argument of blocking someone from getting into NATO. Because, if that was the case, it's like, isn't NATO, like, made up of majority Christian countries? Wouldn't they have, like, barred Turkey from entering? Like, it's like, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, when you think about it from that perspective. It's a secular organization. It has everything to do with national defense, nothing to do with religious ideology. So why the Turks play that as a factor, who knows? But beyond that, you can't treat countries as people or friends that they are these giant apparatuses. And so there's a different way that you interact with them. You can't just go, Israel contributed to the conflict a little bit. Me personally, I don't really like that, so they go. Like, you can't do that. That's just ridiculous. But anyways.
That's true. You have to look out for state interests primarily, because I think people do get caught up with that. And also, I saw Activista mention that as well. The countries are simply there for the interests of the people. It's not necessarily about, like, individual, like, oh, I like this moral or I like this morality and stuff like that. It comes down to global interests here, ultimately, is what we're having to decide on. But one thing I will zonk Israel for, if we're talking about being fair here, is while Israel's faced with a very challenging situation inside of Gaza, and it's really hard to target the military targets versus the civilian targets just because of the density of the area. Israel could have probably tried to reduce civilian casualties a little bit more than they did, because they have gone in there and launched they're sort of like stereotypical large 2,000-pound bombs in certain areas where it's very, very dense with population. I know some people are going to say, well, they got to do what they got to do, but at the same time, they could have done a more precision strike. And that's where I really sort of zonk Israel a little bit when it comes to this stuff, because it is a little bit reckless. But at the same time, just because of that, we can't abandon our ally just because they're doing that. We can tell them, hey, you need to, like, be careful, or there's going to be consequences for that. But the consequence isn't going to be you get abandoned. So, that's just one thing to look at as well.
Also, one more thing, I just saw someone say this. It's really the Department of Offense, not defense. Listen, y'all, I gotta say this. If I become president, I'm actually gonna tell y'all one of my political prerogatives outright. One of my political prerogatives is by executive order to change the name of the Department of Defense back to the Department of War. Why in the world do we call it the Department of Defense? Sometimes we don't conduct defensive actions. Sometimes we conduct offensive actions. All of it is within the scope of war. So why do we change the name of the Department of War to the Department of Defense in the first place? It should just be called the Department of War, because not every action the United States is going to conduct is going to be a defensive one. And just because we get involved in a war doesn't mean that the only wars that are acceptable are defensive ones. Sometimes we do have to conduct offensive wars for certain reasons, like, for example, with Iran. So if y'all vote for me for president in 2040, while it's literally just a clerical change at best, I am going to rename the Department of Defense to the Department of War, much like it was during the Second World War and the First World War, when we were doing great things, and it was not called the Department of Defense, it was called the Department of War, because the department focuses on warfare and war in general. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, because that's a good point, and that's something that I've always thought in the back of my head, and I've never said on stream, but it's going to be called the Department of War. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the Ukraine war news.
All right, and this one goes to Steve Watkins at work, who puts in a $50 donation. Thank you very much, Steve Watkins, for the support. He says, thanks for the hard work, and it's sad to see that more people don't support you. He said, come on, folks, throw in a few bucks. And this is Steve Watkins' words, by the way. He said, how about taking one from the chat?
And I thank you so much for your support, Steve Watkins at work. And thank you so much for enjoying the hard work. We do put in a lot of effort and soul into this thing, and I'm glad to know that people really do enjoy it. I mean, we've got nothing but showerings of praise tonight from everyone, and I got to thank you so much for enjoying it as well, Steve Watkins at work. And also, no one has to support the channel. Steve Watkins said everyone should. No one has to. Like, that's the reality of it. Like, the channel is entirely free to watch. It's ad-free, sponsor-free. We want it to be that way. We want most viewers to be able to sit back and enjoy the channel without having to even think about throwing in a single cent or a single second of time supporting this channel. But if you do want to, you do help the channel to keep running. Because while we don't want people to be worried about supporting the channel, it is a reality that super chats are the only way we keep the channel running. So it's a little bit of a caveat there that people do have to support the channel to help to keep running, but we really don't want anyone to be worried about that too much or having to do that all too much, because, you know, it sort of defeats our purpose of people just getting the news and that's it, instead of making it a really heavily like monetized cash cow kind of a thing like other channels do with channel memberships and all that kind of stuff, and like actual scoops hidden behind Patreon. Like, our Patreon is just for fun. Like, we put random stuff on there. It has really nothing to do with the news most times. A few analysis are on there, but not that many. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Steve Watkins. I hope that does address that the best I can. And we are on to a live chat question by none other than Steve Watkins at work, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news.
All right, so that live chat question here is going to go to, let's see here, Uncovered Cube, who said, Enforcer Matt, if y'all had to put a percentage on World War possibilities, where would you put it? So I'm going to say 0% being less likely, while 100% being the most likely. For me personally, and once again, we're pretty much crystal balling here, so anybody's opinion is pretty much fair game at this point. It's pretty much all equal. I would probably say, in my personal opinion, I would put it somewhere in the range of about 65 to 70% likely. Because right now it seems like there's so many things going on, and really, honestly, if a world war is to start, I think it would honestly start in the Middle East, and that's what we're currently looking at, is several countries, including Russia, potentially getting involved in this situation with the United States and scrapping it out in the Middle East. And one wrong move, if these other countries get involved on the ground, it could mean a global conflict. So it's not super likely, but it is likely. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, going over each area in the world right now, the East Asian area is around 10%. The Middle East is around, let me see here, and let me make sure I'm getting this correct. World War. Okay, so the Middle East is around 15 to 17%, and Ukraine is also around 10% as well. I don't really think there's an incredibly high percentage anywhere per se, but I would say if a world war was to start, it would most likely be the Middle East, because unlike Eastern Europe, where it's really just Russian and American interests that intersect, and really Russia is a very minor power at best in the modern world beyond their nuclear arms, that kind of creates a lower chance of a world war happening here for that reason, mostly for economic factors. But in the Middle East, everyone's interests are intersecting. It's America's, it's Russia's, it's China's, literally everyone's. Like, it's a major trade corridor, it's a major supplier of oil for most countries around the world, and so for that reason, this would be the place where a world war would start, just for the fact that it is so crucially important to everyone globally. It's a crossroads at best. Well, it's a crossroads really is a reality. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, it is, I got to thank you so much once again for support, by the way, really quickly. Steve Watkins at work for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, it is now time for us to move on into Ukraine and cover the news of what's happening in Ukraine. Starting off at the airfield at Morozovsk, as it got blown up again. It did it again. They blew that thing up. Look at it go. Oh.
Oh,
Блин.
Никуда нет, мама.
they're rather calm for this atrocity happening right there.
Yeah, they're just like, oh, look at that. Also, more explosions. Dang. I think they hit some. Goodness gracious. Oh. Dang.
And the explosion was so loud it knocked the audio out.
It literally, it's like, oh, it's like, dang, that must have been loud. We also got to see another attack on Morozovsk. This is the clip right here. Man. It's like a star out there. Still, really nice to see them once again hitting that nice little airfield out there at Morozovsk. We don't know the exact damage yet, but hopefully we'll be getting that soon. Meanwhile, up in the area around Shebekino and Belgrade, we also got to see that a Russian electronic warfare system was targeted and destroyed while heavy metal played in the background. We can see the dome-shaped electronic warfare system right down there. It's not really doing that good of a job at electronic warfare because the drone's literally flying right over it. And now they're dropping a bomb on it. It looks like this thing kind of failed at its job, at least in my opinion. And we see them hitting it right there. We see them hitting it again. And again. And again. They're just slamming them down there. Dang. Dude, they're, Ivan and his boys were down there in their tiny electronic post, and they were getting pounded.
They were down there getting pounded, calling a drone strike.
See here. And Hansen said the heavy metal was more than it could take. For sure, man. The heavy metal is rough on the ears sometimes. Okay, that's not heavy metal. That's actually dubstep. I don't know what their like musical choice is anymore, but we can see that electronic warfare system is done for. That's one choice they made, was to get rid of that thing. We see them showing it off really well. It didn't really cook or anything. It's electronic warfare, so it really just kind of smoldered a little. But that's the end of the clip. And very nice to see the Sky Lords out here blowing up those Russian EW systems. Meanwhile, moving on from that and into our location unknowns, we also got to see that the Ukrainians are starting to use paintballs in training. Look at this. And they apparently have Fun Time at the Beach music playing, so we're going to have to mute that. But we see them tossing little smoke grenades and using paintballs. It's like a paintball war. Look, see y'all, like, you can actually get trained to fight a war on the paintball fields. Get out there and get the paintballing.
That should bring up the morale quite a bit. That looks fun. And also, they're not real paintballers unless you, like, get the tub of paintballs and knock most of them on the ground and put, like, 5 in the tank. Like, you're not a real paintballer until then.
Man, I mean, they're laying down the fire with those paintball guns, man. Look at them. Suppressive fire and everything. Oh, he's hit. Dude, they're literally doing like a paintball match. That's actually pretty cool. I gotta say, I like that. But with that, that's the end of the clip. Really neat to see. And moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see Ukrainian T-64 chilling. Once again with Indian ammo. Indian ammo is becoming very common in the Ukrainian armed forces very quickly, and it looks as though the Indians are becoming a major arms supplier to Ukraine. What a interesting twist to the war. Moving on from that and into our next bit of location unknown news, we also got to see that Ukrainian prisoners are finally starting to enter the armed forces of Ukraine, getting a little second chance at life, I suppose. But here's the clip.
24, President Zelenskyy signed a bill allowing convicts to join the Ukrainian armed forces. According to the Ministry of Justice, there are 27,000 people in Ukrainian jails. However, only a fraction are eligible to join the army. These days, the brigades are racing to recruit potential fighters all over Ukrainian prisons.
The first thing I notice about a person is their behavior. I look for strength, bravery, and confidence.
Bank robber might work.
Man, I'm telling you, man, a bank robber might work. A mafia shiesty might work. You know, like any of them. You know what I mean? Like any guy could work in a prison. You know, like
what's the crimes that are like the best for like soldiers? Would it be a bank robbery, larceny, moida? Man, they'd be like that movie that they said, "Oh, mud is my favorite."
Dude, that ought to be who they
It's
pick.
always up to them whether they want to join. We can't force them. What's most important to me is their motivation. I'm searching for that spark in their eyes. If it's there, we can work together.
Dude, I'll give you a pack of
I'll kill
ramen
her.
for some military service. That sparkle pops up instantly when I say that to him. Like,
It's like what are you going like to tell them as a recruitment speech? You get to go on the battlefield and kill people. Man, it's like if somebody has a spark in their eye after that, they're like, that's probably a nut. They're probably perfect.
oh man, dude, probably.
We actually thought we would end up in some kind of punishment unit, and we were okay with that. We were ready to fight.
We just wanted to put our skills to use.
But once
Oh, wait a minute, what? Hold up, wait a minute, huh? Put the skills to use. What do they mean? What do they mean? Like, hold up. Man, did you hear that? They said we wanted to fight, and then that guy said we wanted to put our skills to use. Like, what were they doing back before they got in
He probably
prison?
means like his math skills or probably like his STEM skills or something like that. Nothing
Yes.
nefarious.
I'm sure it's his arithmetic. I'm sure it's
we
very
arrived
good.
and saw
Much better
things
than
for
ours.
ourselves, we realized it's not so different from regular military service.
Tourist and Greek shared the same cell in prison. Both were fighting before, and both got in jail due to a car accident, resulting in death. With them is Leshy, from the same prison, convicted for the same crime.
Wait, hang on. Wait, hold up. Wait. Did you hear that, Matthew? They all went to prison because they were in a car crash and someone in the car died, so they all just got charged and thrown in prison?
That's interesting. What crime is that, I wonder?
I don't know. I mean, like, maybe, like, here in America, you might be able to go to prison if they found out you were under the influence for that. But, like, if that was just a normal car crash and they all went to prison because someone died in the car crash, dude, I wouldn't be driving a car in Ukraine. I'd be like, bro, I'm taking the train everywhere. I'm not, like, risking going to prison if we got in a crash and, like, Matthew bashed his forehead in on the dashboard and went into a forever nap. I'm not going to prison for that. Like, that's crazy. That's wild.
But with no combat experience. Yet.
You know, when I was in prison, a lot of bad stuff happened to me. My oldest son was taken out by the enemy, then my mom passed away, and my son-in-law, who was leading an aerial reconnaissance unit, went missing. I had to go out there to protect the old folks and kids and find my son-in-law.
Dang, that's rough.
That was terrible.
That's one hell of a backstory right there. But still, very interesting to see. Some Ukrainian prisoners are being recruited into the armed forces. To be honest, that was actually a lot less of a crime than I thought they were in for. Like, that almost was like on the level of mail fraud, at least to me. I was like, wait a minute, that's what they were in prison for. But anyways, moving on from that, we did get to see a brand new Ukrainian drone. This was a downed Ukrainian drone, and I guess this thing is bigger than Baba Yaga because it's like a freaking tank flying around up there. This thing's huge. Like, I don't even know how in the world to describe this thing.
Dang, it carries that massive bomb. That's got
Yeah.
some payload capacity on that.
Dude, apparently it was carrying a 125 millimeter BK-30F laser-guided munition. So this thing is the size of a tank round in the Russian army.
Damn, they got some heavy lifters out here. Bring out the heavies.
Oh no. Oh no, dude, said it. But moving on from that, it's time for us to move on into the casualty report. And oh my golly, damn!
Oh my goodness, 6 more Bobcats. Oh, let's go, baby. Also, they're above 1,000 troops. That's pretty standard these days, but they're keeping the numbers up high. But Enforcer, tell us more.
Yeah, 1,100 soldiers wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 8 APCs, 56 supply trucks, 3 main battle tanks, 42 artillery systems, 37 drones, 2 MLRSs, and 6 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, it was a pretty impressive day, and once again, the Ukrainian armed forces are really racking them up. Moving on from that and down into the area around Nizhnya Divanka, we did get to see that the Russians dumped them. Oh, I have to mute the silly, whimsical music, but check this
That's
out.
that Baby Shark music.
Dude, wait a minute, better yet, man, that's that music that plays. Oh man, I made another hit piece on the Enforcer. Please come watch.
That whimsical Abby.
It's that Dr. Disrespect, I've been hit with the allegations type beat. Like, but anyways, watch the Russians. They were like, oh, it's a drone. And the wounded guy right here, they literally just dump him and run. Just leaving him.
Oh. They got a picture of the guy radioing in looking guilty, too.
Man, he's guilty. He knows he is, too. Moving on down the line and into the area of Kovalivka, we also get to see the Omega Special Forces in Ukraine. They're cool looking. That's all I got to say. Like, there's not much more to work off of than that. But moving on from that, near Zhitlivka, we also got to see the Raggy hitting the Russian artillery. here it is. We're going to be muting that, but we can see them flying around here. We can see the D-30 right down there. Someone said, oh, this channel is anti-Russia and Iran. It's like, isn't that what we're supposed to be? We're pro-Western. It would be weird if we were like pro-Iran and anti-Russian. That'd be like a hypocrite. There's a lot of people like that out there, though. A lot of hypocrites, funnily enough. Aw, man, this one dictatorship is wrong, but the other dictatorship is good and wholesome, heckin' chonkers. Or something like that.
Oh, heckin' chonker upvotes, man. That's a big motivation to, like, switch sides and be a hypocrite to get those heckin' chonkers.
Aw, man, I gotta try and get that clout by being an absolute hypocrite. Aw, man. I've got to sit there and say that I'm anti-Russia but pro-Iran because while one dictatorship is reprehensible for conducting the slaughter of Ukrainians, the other one is heckin' wholesome because it's conducting the slaughter of Israelis only. Aw, man. I would hate to be that stupid, like, mentally. Like to do the gymnastics in my head for that. Like, I couldn't. Like, I simply could not. But we can see this drone here going for some Russian infantry here in these bushes. Uh-oh. Oh, no. Well, not a good day for them, but still, pretty good day for Ukraine. Moving on from that, we also get to see some Russians getting captured in the area of the Siberonsky Forest. There he is.
He looks like he's disgraced his family for several centuries.
For several generations. That scene in the clip, very soft-spoken fella, but did big work taking a Russian prisoner. Moving on from that and into our next clip down near the area of Bakhmut, we also got to see more Russian prisoners being taken. This guy here...
He's mean mugging the camera. That first guy, man, he looks like he's got some beef with the cameraman, which he does, actually.
Dude, you know, man, he actually looks like a certain YouTuber out there, man, like, without the beard.
He kind of does, actually.
It's not a pissing contest. Dude, he looks just like him, man.
He kind of does, man. It's kind of uncanny, really.
Man, and then we got Kron right here. Kron looks like he's trying to get into All Quiet on the Western Front. And then we've got Dilf right here, who I don't know how to describe his look.
It's like a mixture of disgust, he's upset, he's nervous, maybe a little bit disdain.
Indigestion.
I mean, he's sending off all the emotions. Yeah, indigestion, a little bit of, I can't really tell anymore, but this guy's troublesome.
Troublesome indeed. But 3 more Russians taken for sure. Moving on from that, and down near Ivadivsky, we also got to hear a Russian complaining about how bad it is on the front lines. I want y'all to note that this guy seems like he shouldn't be fighting on the front lines, but he apparently is. But here's the clip. Hello, friends. This is Sergey. News from the front line, from the SMO zone. My friends from the regiment are telling me terrible things on WhatsApp right now. Terrible things always happen on WhatsApp, just putting that out there. I'll tell you about some of them. A friend of mine from the 299th Regiment, 3rd Battalion, 9th Company, was discharged for health reasons. First of all, he has shell shock, his head is shaking. Secondly, he has a disability group 3. He had a perforated stomach ulcer. He was operated on and was in the regiment, where he arrived back in February, but he did not receive any treatment there. His name is Alexander Zhurianov. So, my friends, he didn't get any medication. He was in the hospital. Everyone calls the Kostroma hospital a meat grinder. Oh, bro, the hospital is even a meat grinder. That is, people are needed at the front, and they half dead or sent there. And he's not the only one. A man who has ruptured tendons on his right arm, who can't perform any physical actions for health reasons, is sent back to the SMO. He was deliberately, I emphasize, deliberately not sent to the military physician board. And you know how many are like that? This is what our leadership, our president, is doing. He doesn't care about the SMO warriors. They send him half dead, like Sashka Zrananov. He won't even get there because of his health condition. And there are a lot of such cases, many such cases. My friends, here it is, the true face of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief. With his false words about the rights of SMO participants, we have not, and will not have any rights. Man, he was
Bro, this guy doesn't even
tomorrow.
know. Yeah, he's about to lose every single right, even the right to live in a minute. Like, Putin's going to even take that away. It's like, dude, you don't even know yet.
Man, the only rights he's going to be getting are bullets in the right side of the head from that to comment. It's like, dude, I'd be careful making those kinds of comments, man. So you see what happened to the Americans who make those kinds of comments? Prison, or worse. But moving on from that and into Kadima, we also got to see a Ural getting blown up in this area. Check this out, y'all. This is really impressive. Oh my god! But anyways, we can see the Ural 4320. We can now see them giving a rap intro to the drone. The drone's now on its way to the Ural. The Ural is booking it, but the Ural can't book it enough. It gets booked. Boom! Right on the hood.
It lifted the front of that thing beautiful. Oh, look, it's like the wasted like GTA thing.
Oh, that thing cooked. Let him cook. Anyone can cook.
Oh.
Oh, no, they went for the Ural. No, it's gas. Oh, my goodness. Oh, now they're going for a crab. Not a crab, sorry. It's like a, I forgot what those are called. It's like a zill or, it sounds like crab. I don't know what it is, though, specifically, but still. Oh, and they got the Chinese
golf
ATV.
cart.
Uh-oh. Aw, man. Boosh! Oh, wait, hang on. Any second now. Oh, boosh! There we go. And it's on fire immediately. Oh, and here we can see a drone going into a basement, and I don't know what was in the basement, but the building's gone. We now see it hitting an artillery piece. I know we can't really see that too well, but trust me, guys, trust me, bro. It's an artillery piece. That's the end of the clip. Man, what an outro right there. Wow.
Gold ace of spades. Look at that.
Man, look at that. Impressive stuff. Moving on from that and down near Avdiivka, we also get to see them blowing up a special kind of an MLRS MTLB. Whoa. We can see that MTLB right there. We can see the launcher on top of it and the MTLB. They're about to blow it up. Aw, man, blow it up just like my subscribers are blowing up as they're leaving. Aw, man. And we can see that they gave that thing the works. Like a Supreme Pizza out here, getting the works.
How many subscribers could a hot dog man chuck if a hot dog man could chuck subscribers?
Hundreds. Like, hundreds of them. I don't think there's any way to recover from just existing as that guy. Like, I don't really think there is. Speaking of which, somehow we are only like 40 subscribers away from 244,000. So keep it up, folks. Keep it up. I don't know how we did that, but still impressive. But moving on from that and down near Avdiivka, we did get to hear a British Ministry of Defense frontline report, which is juicy. But it's not loading, so we're going to pass on that one. And we're going to start moving on to our actual frontline clips near Otratine. We got to see a Ukrainian Bradley got hit by the Russians. The Bradley did get knocked out, but everyone survived, and we got to see that on film. All right, and we're going to be muting that.
That's music.
I've never heard music like that before. We see the Ukrainians all bailing out and then making their way away from the Bradley. The Bradley, Chad-like, saved everyone's lives. Impressive stuff. We love to see it. And so with that, we're now moving on from that little clip and on into our next one near the area where we also get to see more drone strikes being conducted on the Russians. Blow those bitches up. Hit them. And there they all are. Look at them, grouping up. The one thing we say not to do, they do. They're about to learn.
You see, they've been taught this strategy called two group, and two group's been very ineffective, to say the least. Thank you.
It has been. And we see the drone making its way on in, and oh my goodness, it blew smoke all the way through the tunnel system. You can see it coming out of every opening.
Man, it blew smoke right in the ass end of the tunnel.
Aw, man, I lost another 100 today. Aw, man. Oh, dead on the nail. Look at that.
I don't know what that's like to be in a tunnel that gets smashed like that at the beginning of it. Like, does it suck all the air out or something? It seems like it would create a vacuum.
Oh man, the explosion might not suck all the air out, but I, the hot dog man, will suck it out. Or something like that. And we
Well,
see
that's a big one.
Oh dang. Dude, they drifted that thing in. Did you see that? It was like a sideways drift. Look. That was crazy.
That thing, it literally went scooting inside of that place, man. That was like unreal. It looked fake.
Man, that thing literally went like straight into the opening. It's like, dang. Well, I think that outpost is done for. The 47th Brigade did amazing work here.
Look at that fire back there on the top. You see that fire at the top of the screen?
Yeah, look at that. It's like a little candle up there. That's their eternal flame. Kind of a little morbid, but true. Someone said killed by compression. Probably. But with that,
that seems like it could be, because that pressure wave coming out of that could be like freaking tremendous. Like, you know, when you hit like a tank, I've heard from tankers that it creates like a vacuum and it can like suck you into the small hole that was created. I don't know if that's true or not. Have you heard that, Enforcer?
I don't think I've heard that it sucks you into the small hole. I think it's something about like the rapid compression and decompression of the cabin because of, you know, the shell flying in and displacing a load of air. I think that actually causes people to suffer major internal organ damage and pretty much just die on the spot from that. So it's kind of like a thermobaric of a, well, not really a thermobaric, but, you know, kind of like working off of a similar physics as a thermobaric, and then ends up taking them out that way. I think that's how
it seems
works.
like it could be the same in a tunnel, but I'm not really sure. I've heard that from a tanker. I'm not sure if it was the actual case or not.
You know, maybe we'll have to see one day. We'll have to see. But anyways, we also got to see the Ukrainian anti-air of the 47th Brigade at work. More music ensues. This time the didgeridoo, a new instrument. See him whipping out that blowpipe. See him setting that thing up. They're giving it an epic intro.
Those were the hands of a working man right there. Those hands were like almost like a mechanic's hands.
Show me your hands. You ain't worked a damn day in your life. It's that kind of
Man,
thing.
if you showed your hands to like the roughneck like that with the hands all chewed up, they'd be like, "Damn, son, that's some hard work." I've never seen hard work like that.
Man, you ain't worked a damn day in your life. I worked 100 hours at the ball crushing factory or something like that.
Man, them hands are soft. They haven't seen work.
Bro, they got out the yacht. Bro, they got out the yacht. This thing, I think, if I remember correctly, is called a 20mm GIAT, or GIAT for short. And they literally had the GIAT out there, man. They were shooting down Russian drones with the GIAT. I cannot believe. Now they have what appears to be the RBS-70, maybe. I think it is the RBS-70 from Sweden.
They're throwing back that gyat on them.
Man, when the Russians get hit with that anti-air system, they go, gyat! Something like that. But anyways, that's the clip for the 47th Brigade. Very nice to see. Good to know the air defense is working hard. Moving on from that and down to the southern front near Verbove, we also get to see the 44th Artillery hitting some Russian grads down here. All right. Well, we can see them hitting it.
And you know when you say, yeah, it reminded me of that guy who said, "This ain't water, Playboy. This is that gray goose." And he said, somebody said, yeah. Drink in my cup.
Oh, man. Dude, I think I know what you're talking about, man. That was funny. That was a good clip.
He really just disappeared off the face of the internet after that, but it's interesting.
Man, I still like that guy, the guy who did like the skit where he was blind and he was reading the Playboy magazine in Braille and he went, "Damn," or something like that. Like the delivery of that "damn," it was the best that has ever been seen. Many people have said, "Wow, that's the best. You just can't beat it," and it really was true. He just couldn't beat it. But anyways, we can see them now hitting the Russians again. They're just slamming them down there. They're slamming them down like gray goose.
They've caught the whole forest on fire now. Smokey or that French toast Russian thing would not be happy.
Man, I'm telling you, man, they be cooking down there, man, like a whole bunch of guys on the grill. And and I've heard, man, that there's a really famous group of guys on the grill. They're called Five Guys, burgers and fries. I've also heard that Hot Dog Man frequents Five Guys, but not the restaurant. But moving on from that, we also got to hear of ATACMS launches happening towards Crimea. Oh, sorry, I have to mute that, but we can see the ATACMS launching right there. And that's the end of the clip, but really nice to see. Good to know that they were launching more ATACMS. Meanwhile, down in the area around Sevastopol, we also get to see the Ukrainians, the Russians, unsuccessfully trying to shoot at a Ukrainian naval drone that was trying to enter their protection zone. Here's the clip.
На, братишка, подержи.
Блядь, we hit the high beam zone, and we cannot hit it over the dam.
Wow, that audio is nice.
Man, they out here like the beaches of Normandy, literally fire, like, what's the backstop, Vadim? Oh, I don't know, the village next door. Like, we're just shooting straight at the damn village, right across the inlet. Look at that,
Man,
dude.
that village is about to be riddled.
Dude, it's like, the big step? What big step? I've never heard of such a big step. You mean the step to a big? I don't know. We're just gonna fire right at it. But that audio is crisp as hell. You don't get audio like that often. The guys on the radio are the guys in the other village getting hosed down with a heavy caliber machine gun fire right now.
Guys, you're shaving my beard off with those shots. Cut it out.
Man, now that guy's on that radio going, "Stop! You're hitting me! Stop! Like, just stop, please!" or something like that. But dude, he's like that meme. No! Wait! You know, like, that's literally him. But anyways, moving on from that, we're now going to be moving on out of Crimea and up to Kyiv, because it's time for us to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 891 of The Wire. And hopefully this is a lengthy one. It's not lengthy enough. It's not lengthy enough. And
I wish you health, good Ukrainians.
I wish you health, good Ukrainians. Thanks. But with that,
Man, Zelenskyy looking worried in this shot. Like that first shot's interesting.
man, I'm telling you, man, he does look a little concerned, man. I would say that this is his default look, but it is not. But with that, it is time for the speech. Hopefully, I can go grab a snack and down it because I'm starving to death. So here we go.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Сьогодні було багато ґрунтовних нарад. Початок дня справи військові. Була доповідь головкома Сирського щодо фронтової ситуації. І найуважніше, звичайно, щодо Покровського напрямку. Там незмінно найбільш жорсткі бої, і цей напрямок потребує наших найбільш посилених відповідей окупанту. Кожна бригада, кожен підрозділ на Покровському напрямку, всі наші воїни, які зберігають стійкість там і захищають наші позиції попри російські штурми, багато в чому тримають основу захисту і на всьому сході нашої країни. При цьому ми не зменшуємо уваги і до всіх інших напрямків на фронті, на Донеччині, а також на Харківщині та у південних наших областях. Я вдячний кожному і кожній, чия хоробрість повною мірою працює на Україну. Також сьогодні була доповідь керівника ГУР Буданова. Деталі вони не публічні. Доповідав також міністр оборони Умєров, зокрема, щодо нашої співпраці з Туреччиною, серед іншого про будівництво наших корветів для України. Цю нашу співпрацю ми будемо продовжувати. Провів нараду із командою Міністерства оборони. Готуємо нові, абсолютно сучасні рішення для наших воїнів, які точно приберуть багато зайвої бюрократії і паперової роботи з підрозділів. Вже скоро ці рішення будуть презентовані нашому суспільству. Виглядають дійсно інноваційно. Також сьогодні доповідали і МЗС, і міжнародники Офісу щодо наших особливих зовнішньополітичних можливостей, які є у нашої держави завдяки багатьом українцям і мільйонам громадян інших держав, які вірять в Україну, які підтримують нас. Це можливості, як мінімум, тримати Україну у фокусі світової уваги, збільшувати підтримку для нашої держави, для наших людей, робити дійсно ефективну адвокацію українських потреб і головної потреби якнайшвидше і справедливо закінчити війну. Українці в цій війні вистояли, змогли вже так багато, бо не лише всередині держави об'єднались, але й вже роками утримують єдність світу заради правильної мети, заради України, заради усього того, що робить цей наш світ людяним і здатним перемагати зло. Наша єдність повинна зберігатись надалі в усіх тут, в Україні, усіх в Європі, в світі, хто цінує Україну, хто цінує життя. Вже в цьому серпні ми готуємо новини щодо більшої консолідації і нашого народу, і всіх у світі, хто нам допомагає. Але для цього потрібно, щоб ще попрацював і уряд, і Верховна Рада у серпні. Слава нашим людям, слава Україні!
And Hiram
Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 891 of the War. And with that, it's time for us to move on into our second segment of tonight's stream, where we get to talk to all of y'all. And I gotta say, what a fun segment it is. It's always such an enjoyable one. We get to talk to y'all about anything and everything, or literally anything you want to talk about. And of course, I have to say this very clearly. The news is over. We're not going to be covering the news anymore tonight unless it's something crazy happens, like, a war breaks out of the blue or anything. So we're going to be getting to talk to y'all for the rest of the night. And I got to say, Matthew, whoo-wee, I'm starving, Matthew. I grabbed a honey bun and some saltine crackers. I don't know if you even had time to get a snack, but I was hungry.
I'm actually not doing that bad, honestly. I got a huge, Colt 45 style Arizona tea over here, and that's all I really need. I'm actually doing all right.
Man, I'm telling you what, man. I wish I was doing all right, man. Oh, man, I'm telling you. But with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so moving into our final question segment of the night. While my keyboard screws up and I screw up a super chat in the spreadsheet, let me fix that real quick.
Man.
There we go. So the poll right here that we have left, it says, what is the most likely region where a global conflict would be most likely to break out? It looks 80, whoa, Jack, I'm all over the place. It looks like 80% says the Middle East, while 9% said Asia, 9% said Europe, and 2% said South America. And I don't know why everybody said the Middle East. Did y'all say that just because I said it? I don't know. But I'm definitely with the 80%. I think the most likely region where a global war would break out would be the Middle East because, like the Enforcer said, that is where so many different global interests basically intersect, is right there in the Middle East. So that is probably the most likely region where it could break out. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to agree. I said it earlier. I'd say it again. Middle East is going to be a hot spot. And we got to be ready to blow everyone up, Jack. I'm just kidding, of course, with that. Jokes aside. It is a very serious region. It's a very important one for everyone. And so that's probably where a world war would break out if one did, at least in my opinion. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, also, let's see. As A-Star said, you really need to start preparing ahead of time before you get on stream. Grab some snacks and make sure you eat. That is such a good idea, A-Star. It really is. But for some reason, there is never food around here. Like, I try to figure out how in the world to make food last because we need real food, long-lasting food. And we never get real food or long-lasting food. Like, if we eat, for some reason, I always start to starve about halfway through the stream, no matter what. Like, I got to the point that I would eat before the stream, but the problem with that is that then I overeat, and then I start gaining weight. And right now I'm trying to lose weight, so I can't, I can't just like gorge all the time to stop myself from being starved on a show. So then I kind of have to deal with it. But then I have to try and like get like a desperate quick snack in the middle of the show, which tonight was a honey bun and some saltine crackers. And I'm still trying to eat on the saltine crackers right now. So I hope that addresses that well as to why that keeps happening, because a lot of people are probably like, what the hell? But hey, I got to say this on the bright side, though. I have lost, I think it was like 17 pounds or something like that. Like, it was 15 last time I checked. At this point, I'm assuming it's probably like 17, 18, something like that. So I've lost a pretty good bit of weight. And the hope is that by the time the Christmas dress comes around and y'all see me on camera again, I will look probably completely different than the last time. So hopefully that's the case. I'm still working towards that. So who knows? Maybe it'll happen. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, or really telling you all what's going on in my personal life. But with that, I hope that does address that poll well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, so with that was our last poll to address. So we're now moving on to our super chats, and then after that, we'll move on to our live chat questions. But our first super chat here is going to go to GunFox61, who's a longtime channel legend, and they put in a very generous $50 donation. Huge shout out to you, GunFox, for the support. He said, "Keep up the good work." And the PGM-17 Thor was the first U.S. ICBM first deployed to the UK and the U.S. in September of 1959, and the failure rate was 24%. And please take a question from the chat.
Dang. Let me make sure that's correct. The PGM-17. Oh, that's why I didn't pull up. I put in PGM-71. Oh, yes, I got it so wrong. Let's see here. Goodness. That thing was a little chunky. You know what it kind of looks like? It kind of looks like an Iskander, really. Like, look at that.
It kind of does, actually. Although that might be a little bit larger, I think.
Oh, it's way bigger, but it still looks a lot like an Iskander. Like, that thing really does look a lot like it. I think the Soviets may have copied that or something. But beyond that, I got to thank you for sharing that little fun fact, because I actually do not know a lot. Like, I know a lot, albeit on certain militaries around the world and also history, but I actually don't know a lot about nuclear weapons, because it just doesn't really matter too much to me about nuclear weapons, because my logic is whether a nuclear weapon is big or small, they're not really an actual weapon to be concerned with their damage. It's more so about the implication of it being used, which is generally enough in its own. Even if it is a smaller nuclear weapon or a massive nuclear weapon, the fear of it being used is just enough alone for all of them to end up being the same. So I've never really looked into them that much. I just care about their range primarily, but that's still interesting to hear that this was the first U.S. ICBM with a failure rate of 25%. If the U.S. military had anything nowadays that had a failure rate of 25%, I think someone would have either jumped off of the side of a building at this point in the military, or there would be a whistleblower going around for a major company, and they would probably be getting executed cartel style all over America. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe that's happening somewhere. I would have no clue. Boeing, please don't kill me. But beyond that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. GunFox61, and we will make sure to take a live chat in your on air. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, and the live chat question here is going to go to Knox, who says, how likely will Russia, China, or others that are aligned with Iran would join or speak about joining the fight in the Middle East and LSA forever?
China doesn't really seem that engaged in this whole ordeal at the moment. They did speak against Israel's attack on Nasrallah, well, not Nasrallah, Hania, in Tehran, but they didn't really do much more than that. The Russians are really the only one who would possibly join, and even at that, I don't think it's a hill they'd want to die on. I think they'd probably rather sit back and let us do whatever we want to Iran, because why would Russia defend the country that's probably going to turn against them in the future if they were the only person left in the world? So it wouldn't make a lot of sense for them to try and support Iran in any major form. The Russians and the Chinese probably want a government change in Iran as well, or Iran, whatever you want to call it. But they're probably not that gung-ho to do it, because they don't know if that would open up a chance for a pro-American government to be set up inside of Iran because of American interference at that point. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And I gotta thank you so much once again for the support, GunFox61, and supporting that live chat, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, before we move on to our next super chat, I'm getting some breaking news here that I just saw from some of my sources. We're learning that more than 20 people have been arrested in Iran, including senior officers in connection with the security breach that led to Hania's assassination. So, once again, like I mentioned a moment ago, a very paranoid Iranian regime. They're currently going through and arresting people that they think might have had some sort of connection with it. And really, to be honest with you, I really doubt that over 20 high-profile Iranian government officials really were involved in this. So it sounds like they cast a very wide net and just pulled all of them in to play it safe. So they are extremely paranoid and very interesting. They said senior officers in the military. So a lot of people have been arrested. So I'll be very curious to see here who exactly these people really are and how high up they could be in the government. But Enforcer, what say you?
That is really interesting. I think we will have to wait for those kind of details to come out, but that is very interesting to hear. They're pretty much mass arresting military officials at this point, trying to figure out who it was probably a little bit later on down the line. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you for sharing that news, Matthew. Thank you so much. That was very good of you. Thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next. I don't know why I turned into a Floyd the Barber from Andy Griffith right there. I was like, thank you.
Oh, those carp.
But still, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to Marlene Mercer LSA, who puts in a $28 donation. And thank you very much, Marlene, for that support. And she said, "Stay amazing, guys," and thank you.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Marlene. And thank you for saying stay amazing, because we will try as best we can. I don't think we're amazing, but we'll try and be amazing in the future. And thank you so much, Marlene, for always being with this channel, always saying kind words, and always helping this channel to keep on running as well. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this, keep this channel running, and we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also, by the way, I just saw another piece of breaking news. It looks like Israel is still carrying out their airstrikes right now in the northern West Bank city of Tehran. It looks like they took out a terrorist cell in a car. So, sounds like Jack in the Box, but it's a terrorist cell in a car. They took it out, and we don't know who was in the car, but apparently it might have been someone who was also high profile. So we could be seeing here another assassination of a high-profile terrorist leader. So I don't have the information. It literally just happened, but the car is completely destroyed and totaled, and it looks like the IDF is around the site looking to see the wreckage. So we'll have to wait and see, but pretty big news coming out right now as we speak. But with that, we're jumping into our next super chat, and this one goes to Whiskey Mike 80, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Whiskey Mike, for the support. He said, "F you, Putin."
Hey, that's a message I can get behind right there. F you, Putin. F you to Khamenei. F you to Xi. And let's see here, F you to Maduro, and to whoever the hell's in charge of Cuba, and F you to the fat man in Korea. Hey, I can get behind it all. But still, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to keep this channel running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, Whiskey Mike 80, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And so, a huge shout out to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again.
All right, and the next one goes to Purple Gerbil, the longtime channel legend as well, who puts in a 20 and says the gerbil is in the house. LSA, smash the like and take one from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support. Purple Gerbil and the Joyble is in the house. And I gotta say, we'd love to know the gerbil's in the house, because we love Purple Gerbil. And I gotta say, make sure to smash that like button, everyone. We've gotten up to 2,600 likes tonight. Can we get up higher? I would love to know. And so, with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And we will make sure to get one from the chat. And so, what do we got, Matthew? What do we got?
All right, and this one goes to Anonymouse in the live chat, who says, "Is Iran broadcasting public service announcements telling people to get to the shelters?"
Not that I know of, but they are broadcasting this announcement right here. Let us watch it one more time. Hang on. I gotta get to it, because it's a bop.
It almost sounds like a football game. Not this part.
I like how in the background you can hear the Lada transmission braking, like right here, right there. Like you can hear like the chain in the engine snapping or something. And then the U.S. Air Force.
We're gonna get smashed.
We're all gonna die in the hellfire. Drone strikes, bomb strikes from the Mossad, from the USA.
Bombs hit hard, bombs hit hard, bombs hit so hard.
When the bomb hits your room, it causes an explosion. It sucks out all of the air and burns you alive. Oh, you know, something like that. But anyways, it's like,
Oh my god, that's about the insanity of the song, really. It's like chanting and singing about war. It's like, what the hell is wrong
man, you know, man.
with these Iranians at this point?
Dude, you were lagging so bad right now. I thought you stopped talking right there, and then it just started again. I was like, what the hell? But beyond that, I will say, Matthew, I should drop a Iranian mixtape. Like, I should actually do that. I think I should.
It wouldn't take too much effort, really.
Bro, I'd sit there and just start singing. I'd be like, let's see. Wait, hang on. Let me think of a good starting to it. The sea hit the hill, the helicopter blew up, broke his neck, something like that. We can come up with anything. I mean, there's so much meme material in Iran. We can make any kind of a song. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for sponsoring that live chat too, Purple Gerbil. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to JMP Traveler, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, JMP, for the support. He said, a very important question. Which is better, smooth or chunky peanut butter? And I vote smooth.
I vote smooth. Chunky's okay, but it's not that great because I don't really like the texture of having something chunky and something that's supposed to be smooth. You know what I mean? Like, I want it to be uniform. Like, if I wanted to chew on a roasted peanut, or a peanut for that matter at all, I'd just go get them. Like, not have them in the peanut butter. I would just have, like, roasted peanuts instead of, like, crunchy peanut butter. So I like smooth, me personally. That's my personal take. But still, a very deep question. One that is thought-provoking, JMP Traveler, and probably says a lot about us. I know someone's about to be like, this says a lot about your chakra. And we're going to be like, no, it's like we just like smooth peanut butter. Like, there's nothing more to it, It's simple does. But we are pro-Western. Maybe that's what it means. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Jamie Traveler. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, I like it. We got done literally making fun of a video of Iran, literally saying they're going to kill us all in the video, basically. Someone came and said, why are you making fun of language? It's like, we're not making fun of language. We're making fun of the video of them talking about literally killing all of us. It's like, yes, we're making fun of that. Out of that whole video and us making fun of the whole thing for what it was, which was stupid, somebody came in and said, why are you making fun of language? Like, come on now. Come on. That's just, that's lame.
Listen, I don't deal with stupidity like that. I hate to say it. I don't mean to put it out that bluntly, but it really is meant to be put out that bluntly. I don't deal with stupidity like that. If that's what you took away from that, you probably need to go find a new channel. Also, what is up with that extremely racist profile picture you have? Like, talking about us making fun of language. What the hell is that? Did you see that, Matthew?
Oh, yeah, I just saw it, actually. Let me get rid of them.
Yeah, like, coming, like, they've got their priorities wrong, like, coming in pretty much like the Grand Wizard, and then going to ask us why we're making fun of a song about killing Americans. It's like, you might want to figure out where you actually are at this point before you come in here lecturing me about making fun of a song that's talking about killing people like me. That's a little stupid. But anyways, moving on from that, we are on to the next one. That profile picture, though, was a trip. It's like, what the hell? It's like, how in the world did YouTube even allow that on the platform?
Man, that'd be like Adolf Hitler rolling in and saying, why are you messing with those people? It's like, dude, it's like, what the? It's like, what about you, though? It's like, damn. It's like, especially that profile picture of that person. It's like, geez, it's like, look at yourself first. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat. We have a $20 donation from Gregory Albright. And thank you very much, Gregory, for that support. And he said, you guys should get some good sleep tonight because the next few weeks will be busy, busy, busy.
Oh, and Gregory, you were right about that. It is going to be so freaking busy. We're going to be swimming with work. I mean, we really are. We're going to be up pretty much all day, every day, just keeping track of the stuff. Videos, short war videos are going to be coming out again. It's been a little bit of a dry spell because we haven't had enough news to cover in the middle of the day, but we are certainly going to be having enough news to cover in the middle of the day. A lot of y'all are going to be finally getting those short war videos again after, I think, like a 3 or 4 day hiatus at the moment because we haven't had enough news to make them. But still, thank you so much for the support, Gregory Albright, and we should get some sleep. And that's why we're rounding it out tonight. I'm just kidding. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you once again for the support.
Yes, indeed. And our next super chat goes to Carl Pattison, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Carl, for support as well. He said, great work as usual, and please take one from the chat.
And I got to thank you so much for support, Carl Pattison. And thank you for saying that it's great work as usual. We do try our hardest. And I got to say, thank you so much once again for the support and help with this channel to keep running so that way we can keep on working like we do to get this news out. And we will make sure to take one from the live chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And this question goes to David Long. He said, have you heard that the U.S. sent B-2s to the area to be stationed in the UAE?
I did not hear that, actually. That's very interesting to hear. Usually the B-2s actually fly all the way from America to their target and then back. So that's actually news if that is true, but I have not heard about that. But that must be why they put that in that war music video, Matthew. They said, the B-2 bombers, we can't even see them. They drop bombs right on their head. We cry in fear. Something like that. It's like, dude, that would be the mixtape I'm dropping. I'd be like, It's a giant freaking airliner who, for some reason, we can't see it. It's dropping bombs on us. Oh, but anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much for the support, though, and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you, Carl Pattison, for sponsoring that live chat as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat right here is going to go to Richard Head. He puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Richard, for that support. Oh my God, we just got Head. I think Richard's name is a play on something there, but I'll let y'all figure it out. But anyways, Richard said, LSA, LSA, LSA. He said, thanks for always being the unbiased news. And take a question from the chat.
Dude, remember that that fat slob out in Texas that called us that multiple times? You remember that?
Oh, yeah. Big head.
Oh, man, dude, I wish we could say that stuff on Filter and Stream. And then every 3 minutes, he would go back into that Discovery Channel documentary where he was in it for like 20 seconds.
I was in Modern Marvels right here. You see, and also those guys with an unfortunate dig head.
But still, thank you so much for the support, Richard Head. I like that name. Very, very adept name for some people, like Hot Dog Man. Hot Dog Man should be called Richard Head. But beyond that, thank you so much for enjoying our unbiased news. We try our best. And tonight, I hope folks really enjoyed that, because we did actually cover a little bit of a bill that is in the Senate right now. And I hope that we covered it as neutral and as unbiased as possible, because while it was inside of the U.S. government, and we usually do not talk about that kind of stuff, considering that it's a bill that is pretty much a declaration of war of a sort, although it's really just authorizing force instead of saying that they're going to war. It still is something that we've felt was worthwhile and important to cover, considering what we're seeing right now. And so I hope that we were able to cover that as objectively and as neutral as possible, while still keeping it interesting as well. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to take a question from the chat in your honor. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And this question right here is going to go to 300 Ghost, who says, if the USA does go to a full-scale war with Iran, would less aid be sent for Ukraine? And also, do you think that China would get brave and try more provocations toward Taiwan?
I think if our posturing is really weak in the area of the Middle East, it probably will start to spur the Chinese into being a lot more aggressive towards Taiwan, because they already are right now. As far as what's going on in the Middle East, if something did kick off, knowing how the American government works, which on an unbiased, non-political level is actually pretty goofy, in my opinion, we probably will see that Ukraine support is removed and given to Israel instead, although we could literally fund all three corners of the world, Taiwan, Israel, and Ukraine simultaneously, and it wouldn't really be that big of a strain on the budget. Like, I don't know if anyone's watching the national debt, but for the amount it's rising about every month, the amount of support that we're giving to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan combined is a drop in the bucket compared to how much debt we're gaining per month. So at this point, what does it really matter? And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one. But still, thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat. Very good question, and I hope I was able to answer that fairly well, at least in my opinion.
Yes, indeed. And also, please, folks, no politics in the chat. We avoid those politics. We try to skirt around these issues so closely. Like on the bill earlier today, we were trying our hardest to skirt around that. So please, no politics. But anyways, jumping into our next super chats here, we have a $20 donation from Gregory Albright without a comment. We also have a $20 donation from Dixie LaFleur, as well as a 10 from Heather Fitzgibbon, and a 14 from Lyndon de Solinaires, who said just because. And a huge shout out to Gregory, Dixie, Linda, and also Heather for the generous support as well. We appreciate it very much. And of course, that helps keep the work running. But Enforcer, what say you?
And a huge shout out and a huge thanks to all four of y'all for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Gregory Albright, Dixie LaFleur, Heather Fitzgibbon, and Linda DeSaunders. I gotta thank all of y'all. Linda DeSaunders said it was just because, but y'all support isn't just because. It has a purpose. It helps this channel to keep on running. Helps this channel to stay alive. And if it wasn't for folks like y'all who are supporting this channel, y'all wouldn't be able to see the Lee Spring Army and the Enforcer channel every single night, because we wouldn't be able to make it possible. The small amount of super chatters we get every single night compared to the amount of live viewers we have is what makes this channel a reality and helps us to keep this thing running. And so a huge thank you to you once again, to all of you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to Super Action General, who puts in a $10 donation while that tea nearly takes me out. Thank you very much for that support, by the way. He said, if the U.S. does go to war, do you think that support for Ukraine will drop since Iran will be the priority? And also, would China and North Korea take advantage of the situation to invade its neighbors? And LSA for life. And that question is oddly reminiscent of the other one I just got from the live chat, but thank you very much for the good question.
It's very similar. It's like the same thing, but in a super chat versus a live chat or something like that. But anyways, I thank you so much for your support. And that's a great question. I almost answered that verbatim just a moment ago. But I would have to be honest with you. Knowing how the American public works, and I gotta be honest with y'all, I've kind of become a little bit more cynical on the American public as I've done this more and more, because you kind of end up having to deal with some of them, some of these people I'm about to be talking about on the channel, and it ends up making you a little bit more cynical. Somehow, people can support Ukraine, but not support Israel, although they are in pretty much identical situations in different areas of the world, being Western aligned countries going up against a almost unified axis of evil. But for some reason, Iran is good, heckin' chonkers wholesome, and Russia is up, down, dude, heckin' chonker terrible. I don't know how in the world people like do the mental gymnastics in between the two. To me, they look about the same, at least as far as being unstable, violent dictatorships. But for some reason, people don't look at them that way. So if a war in the Middle East starts, all of your activists, which are just blessed, wonderful children of the Republic, they will all immediately drop the Ukraine war because that's yesterday's thing. They're going to be like that clip from Toy Story where the kid said, I don't want to play with you anymore. And they're just going to drop the Ukraine war off to the side, and they're all going to go pile on top of the Iran-Israel war. And they're all probably going to go towards the Iranian side for some reason, because Israel is just so bad. It's so evil, although they're a Western-aligned country. It makes no sense. But beyond that, I would have to say that's probably how it will go. And so we'll probably see that a lot of the U.S. government's attention is moved towards Iran and Israel. But to be honest, that actually gives a lot more wiggle room for everyone who actually cares about the war in Ukraine and is not just doing it for activism and heckin' chonker updo points and social credit. It really allows the government to do whatever they want with Ukraine, and it doesn't really have a lot of attention on it anymore. So they could support Ukraine in the tens of billions, and no one's really going to be looking at it enough to care about it enough, because most people are going to move on to the next hot topic, which is going to be the war in between Israel and Iran. So I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion on that part. And once again, like I was saying earlier about Taiwan, yes, I think if we have a weak stance in the Middle East, China is going to get even more aggressive with Taiwan. I feel like that's just a binary input and output. If we are weak in one area, we are going to be weak in them all. So China is going to take that as a advantageous opportunity in the area to start dealing with Taiwan a lot more aggressively and really push the one China, two systems model that they've been trying to for decades. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Super Action in general. And of course, LSA for life and long live the Lee Spring Army. And also, Matthew, I see a bot in here. I don't know if you got him. I don't support us being involved. We don't need to be the world's police.
But if you're not the world's police, the catch with that, I understand, like, some people are like, hey, we don't want to send our money overseas to foreign countries. I understand that because obviously the U.S. has its own problems and we might need the money. But here's the thing, though. If we don't be the world police, things will go out of control because there has to be a leader in the world. And right now, the U.S. is the leader globally in trying to influence foreign policy. If we're not the lead, and if they can round together all these people, all these different countries, that can be a massive threat to the United States national security. We cannot allow that to happen. In today's world, with everybody so interconnected, we simply can't be isolationist. That's simply impossible. And I think that would be a bad route to take.
I would have to agree. And also, I would have to say it doesn't really make a lot of sense to not be the world police, because how in the world, because I know the position. America's a strong country, it's a great country. So we're going to be weak enough that we're not going to defend our own sphere of influence that we spent about 100 years carving up in the world. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And also, let's see. Yeah, we are also corrupt. We don't have enough of anything to continue doing what we're doing. What do you
print
mean
the
we
money,
don't
though.
have enough? We have more aircraft carriers than the rest of the world combined. We have a military budget so big that the next 10 countries combined aren't even as big as our military spending annually. We also have the biggest economy by GDP figures in the world. We also have the second largest manufacturing base in the world behind China. We also have one of the largest populations nationally in the world. What do you mean we don't have enough of something? Like, we have more than enough of everything to be a superpower. We are a superpower. We've been around the world for 70 years since World War II, doing everything everywhere to maintain this sphere. So why in the world would we go through all of that effort, all of that expense, and all of that time to then just give it all up and say, you know what, we got to fix homelessness and poverty, because no one else in the world's history has ever been able to fix homelessness, poverty, and things like that. But for some reason, if we just give up everything around the world and give it to the Chinese and the Russians, we'll finally be able to fix homelessness and poverty when all of our foreign interests are shot and beyond repair, and pretty much we're screwed over everywhere.
And also another thing as well, I see the argument coming out right here about going into more debt in the United States. Here's the thing, people. I'm not going to get political, but we're 35 trillion in debt. We're hardly able to service the loan, like, interest amounts on it. Like, the interest right now is basically taking up all the money we're putting toward paying down the national debt. It's pretty much underwater at this point, is the truth of it. I'm not sure how we're going to get out of that, but the solution is not to withdraw from everywhere around the world, because ultimately that would create a vacuum. China would step in, then we would have a massive problem on our hands. And we know that China has imperial ambitions. They want to take Taiwan, and they would love to take other stuff as well if they could get the coalition together to actually make that happen. So then we would actually have to fund a war then, which would take us even deeper into debt. Even if we decided to back out as the world police, going into an actual war would be very, very expensive, much more expensive than being the world police. So it just doesn't make any sense to just pull out of the whole world. It wouldn't make any sense whatsoever.
Also, I don't know what world you're living in, because you say everyone hates us. Who's everyone? China and Russia? I mean, if that's everyone, yeah, I'm fine with them hating us. Like, who cares? They hate us. Like, so what? I mean, like, so what you're saying is because we've stood up for things in the world, and other people have their interests and we have ours, and they hate us because we're strong enough to protect our interests globally, we should give up? Like, I don't get that idea. Like, is it better to be liked by everyone and be a spineless pushover, or to be disliked by maybe half of everyone or most of everyone, but still have a spine to be able to stand up for what you want in the world? I would say that's better to be disliked by everyone and stand up for yourself than be liked by everyone and be a spineless pushover. That's my honest opinion. Like, that's my personal opinion in daily life. That's my opinion in foreign affairs. Why in the world do we want to be liked? Like, what does it matter to an American citizen like you, who may or may not have ever traveled abroad, that foreigners like us or dislike us? Most Americans don't even leave the United States in their lives. Like, I think it's about 30% of Americans in their life have ever traveled abroad. 60% of Americans don't even really have to care if a foreigner likes us or not, because most of them will never see a foreigner. Most of them just live in America. And so, let's see. We're just as corrupt. Well, if we are, I would still rather push our flag and our nation forward than someone else's, and then get screwed over at the end of the day. And this is something I always have to say to that kind of an argument. You're saying America is just as corrupt, and we do the same things as the Russians and the Chinese. And we do. That's actually true. I wouldn't say corrupt. I would certainly say we're not as corrupt as the Chinese and the Russians. They're on a whole other level. I don't even know where you would get the idea that we're that corrupt, because we don't go around blowing the brains out of journalists when we don't like them. And we also don't have a social credit system like China. So I don't know where we're getting the idea that the U.S. is as corrupt as Russia and China. But the thing I don't get is that you're saying, okay, so we're as bad as them. So for some reason, we're the only ones that need to pull out of everything in the world, while the Chinese and the Russians try and get into everything. So that way, when all of this is said and done, we're screwed over. The Chinese and the Russians still hate us, even though we screwed ourselves over, and they won't give a damn about you, and they're not going to give a damn about any American who literally destroyed America from the inside out and helped them win, because guess what? You're an American and they hate you. It doesn't matter whether you like them or not. And that's something that I always get across as a point with Iran. It doesn't matter whether you're pro-Palestine or pro-Hamas or pro-Hezbollah, because guess what? Those people hate Americans and they hate you, whether you like them or not. And if they got a chance to kill you, they kill you too. And they'd high-five themselves after they killed you, and they believe you're a sucker for supporting them in the first place because they wanted you dead too, whether you liked them or not. That's the reality of the situation out there in the world. And so I would
also, if y'all think that our economic situation is bad, just know that all the economies being so interconnected now, China is struggling as well, even though our economy is having some trouble, and obviously Russia is struggling because they're literally sanctioned to hell and back. So all the major economies around the world right now are really in severe trouble, if we're being honest here. So it's not unique to the United States that we're having some debt problems. It's also in China. So whenever we're having the problem, don't worry about it. We're on the level playing field.
And let's see. So now they're saying, I don't believe we would spend the money saved on anything good anyways. Then why does it matter? Like, what does it matter? So you're saving the money for nothing? Like, you don't even think it's going to be used for good? Why in the world would we not use that money supporting our national interest? And you just sound like a defeatist at that point. You're just like, you know what? I hate America. I hate living in America. Let's just screw America over internationally. Not that the money's ever going to be used for anything good. Like, that's a worse argument than I was assuming, because I thought you were going to say something like, we need to help out the veterans and the homeless and like the ones who are in poverty, like, which are problems that have never been fixed, no matter how much time we've dedicated to them or anyone's ever dedicated to them. There's still poverty and homelessness everywhere. Like, there's poverty and homelessness in China. There's poverty and homelessness in Japan. There's poverty and homelessness in Russia, in Ukraine, in Germany, in the UK. There's not a single country in the world that can put enough money into that problem to fix it, because it is a necessary evil of a modern, or a society at all, whether it be ancient, classical, modern, whatever you want to call it. That is a necessity of society. There will always be people who are homeless and poverty stricken. It's not a necessity that we like, but it's one that is ensured in society in general. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense to go, oh, you know what? I don't want America to be involved. That makes no sense, because you're not even saying that the money could be used better elsewhere. You're just saying you don't want America involved for no reason. That's kind of like that Chinese talk right there. It's like, we're not going to do anything if we withdraw. Like, we're not going to do anything else. We're just going to withdraw and let everyone else win and then do nothing.
That's definitely not a good approach. That's definitely not a good one.
Man, that's that Xi Jinping thought right there. It's like, that's what the Chinese want Americans to think. But anyways,
and also by the way, I see like the arguments here are sort of eluding me a little bit. Some people are saying that we could use the money right back here at home in America because, for example, the vets aren't being taken care of properly. The catch with that, though, is I don't think throwing money at things like that is going to fix the problem. It's more of a management problem than it is a money problem, because there's already plenty of money flowing through these things. So throwing money at it is not going to fix it. So, saying that we should back out of the world and back out of being the global police and keeping the world in line so that way a war doesn't break out, just to throw more money at a problem that's not even going to fix, that's just not a good argument.
It isn't. And also another thing, while I put away the saltine cracker that I was just trying to nibble at really quickly, another thing that is really important to remember, I just want to point this out, because I cannot stand the argument that if we just stop doing everything around the world and we just focus inwards at America, we can fix everything. Like America will be a utopia. I don't think a lot of people understand this, but the reason why America is so well off but so bad off right now in a double-edged sword kind of a way is because we're everywhere in the world. Like, we're all over the place. The reason why we have iPhones is because we have connections, either somewhat friendly connections or aligned with a lot of the countries that end up doing all the little pieces of manufacturing that make an iPhone possible. And then that iPhone makes it to America. That's really like everything. It's really because of the massive sphere of influence and all of the countries that we have in that sphere or are slightly connected to that sphere economically around the world that have made the living conditions that we have in America today a reality. If you pull out of everything in the world, guess what? The Chinese now get unlimited access to oil. They then create their sphere of influence in Africa. They pull the Europeans away from us because we're not around, so now they need to go to the Chinese for security. Guess what? We don't have the trading partners of Europe anymore. So America's out of a lot of money. That's okay, though. We're still going to take our limited pool of resources that we have, not as much as we used to have because we pretty much just pissed all of it away, but we're going to use the limited amount of money we have left to really help out those veterans. But wait a minute. oh, there's not a lot of jobs anymore in America because our economic activity is shrinking because our global footprint is incredibly small. And a lot of people don't really want to invest or cooperate with American companies because the American government won't be there to back you up if an international venture goes south. So let's go to the Chinese instead. We'll give them our money. And so now America's way down the tubes and with no money. It's now a dwindling power with a massive military built up from a time it was a superpower and a decent nuclear arsenal, but a shadow of its former self. May as well be a echo of the past when America was a great and amazing country. And even still, somehow, no one's taken care of. There's still going to be veterans that are not taken care of. There's still going to be homeless people. There are still going to be people living in poverty. In fact, there may even be more then than there was before because America literally shrank itself down to that of an insignificant nation just for no reason. And what's funny is that when I was describing that country that we would see in the future if we did something like that, I'm describing the modern day Russian Federation. Because if y'all don't know, when the Soviet Union collapsed, they did that line of thinking. Just like a lot of people want to argue would happen in America, like we just need to pull out of everything and stop doing everything. Russia did that for just a short 6 years, well, really 5 years, and look how badly it did them. Like they got screwed in just 5 years, and they've never recovered from that. That's why America can't do the same thing. You're literally begging for a modern day Russian Federation of North America in every single way. It would literally look identical. And then people would still be complaining, oh, well, the homeless aren't taken care of and the poverty stricken aren't taken care of. Oh, what are we going to do? And there's nothing to do. Like, I hate to say that. Like, it sounds brutal, but there really is nothing to do. You just can't do anything about it. And I want, if someone disagrees with me, I want you to name one country. It doesn't even have to be one in the modern day. It just has to be one in history that fixed homelessness and poverty. If you can name one country, which you can't, because historically there's not a single example of that, I will take that and I will go with it. But there isn't a single example in history where homelessness and poverty were ever fixed in a single country anywhere. So the fallacy of if we just focus entirely on America and screw everyone else, we'll fix everything. It's a lie. It will never be fixed, no matter how much time and attention is given. And then you just lose your sphere of influence around the world for nothing at that point. And so
here's a question. Here's a question for you. If the United States just said tomorrow, we're wiping out the 35 trillion in debt. We're wiping it off the books, and that's that. What would happen?
Hell, a lot of people would be coming trying to get their money, but I don't think anyone would be able to get the money, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't think anyone can get it from this.
I mean, seriously, I'm not trying to be like a smart ass or anything like that, but seriously though, what would actually happen? Like, who's going to come trying to collect the debt? And do you think the whole world's going to turn against the USA because we wiped the debt out? I'm not saying we should do that or that's what's going to happen, but just hypothetically, it's like, really, is someone going to show up on the shores talking about, hey, we want our money? It's like, I really doubt that because they won't arrive on the shore to even get the money. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I would have to say like, who's going to, like that's the thing that people don't think about. It's like, if we default on those loans, and interestingly enough, I think half of our national debt isn't even to foreign countries, it's to ourselves, to intergovernmental agencies who keep in, the promissory notes or something like that, and they cash them in every year on the stuff they don't spend. So most of it is bureaucratic. It's not even real debt we owe to foreign lenders. It's just debt. It's debts to groups like the CIA. Like, they get a certain budget and they don't spend it all, so then they make a promissory note and the government says, okay, well, if you ask for that money in the future, we will pay it out to that agency. And that's what it is. Most of the debt is that. I think it's more than half. It's like 60% or something like that. So that's not even real debt. So if we're talking about actual debt that we owe to foreign lenders, it's a little bit less, actually. It's a few trillion less than our national GDP currently. It's probably around 18 trillion or something along those lines. And we're making about, I think, 23 trillion GDP annually at this point. So going off of that, there's actually not that much that we owe to foreign lenders. And a lot of people are like, not that much. It's still 17 to 18 trillion. Yeah, but you have to keep in perspective that there are a lot of countries out there who owe more than 100% of their GDP to foreign lenders. Ireland is actually an example of that. Ireland has a GDP that is kind of small, actually, compared to most European countries. It's still a very good and successful country, but at the same time, I think their foreign debt is something like 300% of their national GDP right now. And they're still doing fine. I mean, the Irish are not defaulting anytime soon. They're not getting screwed over. They're all good. So I hope that doesn't kind of.
It seems like, you know, I don't know if I'm in favor of wiping the debt out necessarily, because I don't really know who that would actually hurt, or if it would actually hurt anything at all. But we could at least say that we're going to wipe out the interest that's owed on it or something like that. Because right now, from my understanding, we're simply paying down the interest. We're not even paying back the principal of the money that's been borrowed for the federal government. So it seems like we could say we're going to adjust the interest rate a little bit. We're going to adjust it down to zero and just pay back the principal. And really, that seems like it'd probably be the best thing at this point, because if you're paying down only interest and you're not paying back any of the principal, then you're never going to pay down that loan. And we're going into more and more debt. So it's going to be an endless cycle of never getting out of it. So, you know, we could at least get rid of the interest.
Yeah, I'm trying to look here at the debt clock. I brought it up on the screen just to talk about it really quickly. Let's see here. Oh, look, they have like little infographic things that pop up now. They never had that before when we were like in school. But let's see here. I'm trying to see U.S. federal spending, federal budget deficit. Okay, so really quickly, I will say this though, because a lot of people are like, what are the biggest things that we spend on? The biggest things that we actually spend on nationally in the United States are non-discretionary items, meaning that we don't, the Congress actually doesn't really get a say in how much we spend or do not spend on these. It's mandated by prior acts and bills that were passed that we have to spend this money. And Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security are actually the largest consumers of money every year. Just in Medicaid, there's $1.8 trillion in Medicaid and about $1.5 trillion in Social Security. This is actually, I believe, the annual budget, because this right here, the defense budget, which is $912 billion, close to $1 trillion, that's actually our current annual budget. So I'm guessing that these are also the annual budgets as well. And it looks as though they're saying that they're climbing. It's not like the Congress is literally approving every single dollar that you're seeing right here on the clock. But mostly social programs make up, like Medicare and Social Security, they actually make up the large majority of the government spending every year. And it's something that we actually don't get a say in. It's something that the government has to do. It's non-discretionary, so they don't get a say in like upping or lowering it. But however, they do get a say in upping and lowering the defense spending. That is something that is discretionary spending. And so the government actually gets to say how much military spending there is annually, and we keep on bumping it up. Even still, what's crazy is that even at that level, it's only a little bit above 2% of our GDP annually, which is bizarre, like when you really think about that. But beyond that, you can kind of get an idea why the spending is this high. And I wish that it broke down who we owed the debt to. That's what I was looking for. Dude, they have an app for this thing now on the phone. Like,
man, who wants to download that on their phone and stare at the debt every day? It's depressing as hell.
Yeah, I'm trying to see where in the hell. Dang, they just literally do not have.
I think it says, was it sources right down there below? See, it says like sources right there at the bottom, or about.
Let's see. About. Okay, that's a really short description.
The purpose of the debt clock is to tell you how far deep we are in the hole.
To tell you how broke we are. It's not broke, but still. Okay, get that off screen. So, yeah, you know. Anyways. Oh, here we go. U.S. debt held by foreign countries. It's actually not that much. It's $8.5 trillion that we owe to foreign countries. The rest of it, I'm assuming, is internal debt.
So it's a scam. We've been loaning money to
ourselves. It's a Ponzi scheme. It is a literal Ponzi scheme. None of the money, like out of this $35 trillion, we owe the majority of that. At least I would say, let's see here, $27 trillion of that. We owe it to ourselves. Like we only owe $8.5 trillion to everyone overseas. Like every single country that has ever lended to the United States, we only owe them about $8.5 trillion. So there's our answer. It's like who in the world, like, okay, so here we go. Here's the thing. We owe all the money to ourselves. So what if we just erase the debt we owe to ourselves? Like to the intergovernmental agencies, which make up apparently most of this. Like then at that point, the national debt's only about 8.5 trillion. And that's not actually that high at all. In fact, that's hardly high. That's way less than I thought it was.
Yeah, it actually is.
Like, you know, and it's like, what is the CIA and the FBI going to do if you tell them, okay, we're going to like wipe out the trillions of dollars of promissory notes that y'all have with the government. Y'all just don't get to spend that anymore. You just get whatever you get in your yearly budget. It's like, what are they going to do? Well, they're not going to do anything. They're just going to go, okay, like, guess that's that. Because it's not like they're spending that money anyways. That's why it's in promissory notes, and that's why it's a debt. It's because we owe it to them. They haven't ever cashed it in. So it's not like they're going to cash it anytime soon and go, actually, we would like 500 cigarettes. It's like, they're not going to do that. Anyways.
Man, cash me outside. How about that?
Yeah, that's it. But you know something that debt clock does, Matthew? It always gives everyone a good, goofy thing to say. You know, like, y'all wouldn't repay the debt in your lives, or we're swimming in debt. It's like, okay, so I spent $100 and I owe myself $100. It's like, is that debt? It's like, is that really debt? It's like, to me, it's not. If it's intergovernmental debt, that's not really debt. That's just like magical pixie dust numbers. What does it matter? It does not matter. And
the debt that's really concerning is the consumer debt, like credit card debt, like actually owed back by regular people. That's what's actually concerning, to see that at a record high level, and also the interest rates going so high that you can barely make your mortgage payment. That's what's more concerning to me.
Yeah, and so I think we got to the bottom of it, folks, about the national debt thing and the whole fallacy of we need to focus on here, is that most of our money is owed to here. It's literally owed from us to us. So what does it matter if we do not, like, we are not going to collect on our own debt. Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. It's an intergovernmental debt to other agencies. Why in the world like, okay, I think we beat that into the ground fairly well. If y'all get the point I'm getting, y'all get it. If y'all don't, y'all don't. But what I'm saying is, how in the world is that a crushing thing, that debt, when only 8.5 trillion of it is actually owed to other real people? You know, the rest of it is owed to ourselves. Is that really even debt? This is not like the U.S. government is going to cash in on the U.S. government's debt and collapse the entire damn country for no reason. That doesn't make any sense. And so...
Also, someone in the live chat said, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And that sounds almost like a threat. It's like, well, I'll own nothing and I'll be happy. It's like, that doesn't sound like an option. It's like, what the hell does that mean?
Man, I don't know what that means.
That sounds like socialism.
I'm not digging it. That sounds like Maduro. But anyways, I hope that does address that fairly well. But we do have to get back to the super chats. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Sarah Ratcliffe, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much, Sarah, for that support. And she said, thank you both for running these great streams, and thank you for watching. I said, keep going from the UK, LSA, and please take a question from the chat, and Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support, Sarah Ratcliffe, and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. Thank you so much for enjoying these streams. We try our hardest to make sure that they're interesting and entertaining to a sense. At least the best I can. And I got to thank you so much once again for being one of our viewers from the good old United Kingdom. And we will make sure to take a live chat in your honor, Sarah Ratcliffe. And of course, Slava Ukrainian, long live the Leah Spring Army. What do we got, Matthew?
All right, in this live chat, and also, by the way, before I grab that, it looks like people were saying that the World Economic Forum, which is just a complete like cesspool or whatever. It's a joke. It's just one of those like think tank, like worthless kind of organizations. Apparently they said that. So pretty stupid. That doesn't sound very Western or democratic, that statement whatsoever. So pretty much on par with their thinking.
Dude, that's like people taking the World Economic Forum seriously is like people taking the United Nations seriously. It's like they have no enforceable power. What does it matter? Like, I think I heard something at some point about they were trying to make people eat bugs. It's like, I haven't seen anyone eating bugs yet, and I heard that like 4 years ago. So how powerful is the WEF? Apparently not at all. So why even care what they have to say? Like, I don't know what's up with people.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know what's up.
After we finish.
I don't know what's up with people, Matthew, and believing that like the United Nations has power over the United States, or the World Economic Forum has power over the United States. It's a forum. Like, it's just where people talk. A lot of people say stupid stuff. So I just like tone most of it out. But go ahead.
Well, does the WEF, do they live in China? Do they live in Venezuela? Do they live in Russia? Probably not, would be my guess. Most of the people probably sitting on the WEF probably live in democratic countries where it's capitalism. But yet they'll preach all this garbage that is not even practiced in the countries where they're from. And they like living in the countries where they're from because it is capitalist and it is free. And it's not like China. So it's always funny to me how the biggest advocates for like a communist society are always the people living in capitalist societies.
And then they get communism and they don't like it. Amen, brother. But
and then they repeat the cycle all over again. The stupidity continues.
Because that wasn't real communism. This is.
And then
they do the same reprehensible crap again. and then it's a failure again. It's shocking, really. It's shocking how dictatorships in general are always failures, and fascist and communist governments are always failures. It's always shocking to me how that is, and I just don't know why people can't be happy with a nice democratic system of some form, a self-determining government, and a nice, good, competitive system, a competitive economic system. I'm not saying like corporatism or anything crazy like that, like where you just go like to the hyper fringe of capitalism where it becomes insane, looking at Japan in that instant. But I'm saying, a nice, good middle ground, good competition, but, people aren't getting screwed over at the end of the day on any level. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here is going to Andy L, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Andy, for always supporting the channel. He says, thank you and good night to the LSA. And good night to you, Andy.
And good night to you, Andy L. I hope you enjoyed tonight. I gotta thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. Good night to you. I hope you have a great night. Sleep well. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Rob S, who puts in a 10. And thank you, Rob, as well. He said, great news every stream, and thanks.
And thank you so much for the support, Rob S. And thank you for thank you for enjoying the great news we have every stream. We try our best to get out good, interesting, well, not good, but interesting news. And I hope that it has been coming out quite well. And thank you so much once again for support, Rob S, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to Live, Laugh, Toaster, and Bath, who puts in an $8 donation and says, can we get a pimp marmot? LSA.
What's up, bitches?
Oh, hello. Oh, hello, they get said. Pimping ain't easy, and especially not easy for a marmot. I'm telling you why. You see that little hot dog man down there? Look at him. He's a failure down there. He's running the hot dog stand while smoking a very big blunt.
Oh man, every time I get hard into politics, people leave me, and I still don't know why. Oh man, someone help me.
He gets hard into politics.
Oh man. I don't even know where to go with that statement. That could be taken two ways, but that's pretty accurate though. Oh man, effing Twitter bullshit.
Let's see what's happening in Romania.
Dude, with the detective music going on in the background. Ew, yuck.
And then you heard like the arcade like coin sound. Ding-ling-ling. And so, oh my god. what the F was that?
Oh man. Dude, and it took him like 3 seconds to process that he was still live on air and he wasn't just in the privacy of his own domicile. He had to sit there and go, oh, what is that? And then he went, wait a minute, I'm live. And then he went, ew, yuck. Oh, man, dude. I'm telling you, man, we need another hit piece. I need y'all to go over there and tell Hot Dog, man, he's got to make another one. We've got to have some more laughs. We got to have more comedy. Tell him to get on it. Tell him to get on it. But still, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for helping this channel to keep on running, Live, Laugh, Toaster Bath. And we do have to say, Pimp Marmot is pimping. And of course, we love to see Alan the Pimp Marmot. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And Lewis Roth said, why aren't these guys so jovial? It's because it's who we are. Why wouldn't we be jovial? I mean, everyone else in the world hates their life. Do we have to too? I don't hate my life. Other people might, but I'm not going to show it. Don't you find it funny, Matty? Man, laugh with me. Oh man, we're just so I have to laugh.
Let's see. Make sure when you crunch that glass next time, make sure you bring safety goggles. Oh!
Dude, that really was like it, man. Or better yet, it's like, yeah, that's funny. And then you have the the billionaire who, doesn't he sound like they're laughing?
Next time you bring the car around, make sure you put some air in the tire.
Wait, hang on, man. Oh man, I'm telling you, why the chicken crossed the road? To try and get the tax break. Oh!
No, or better yet, and by the way, I'm imitating Jeff Bezos, by the way. He'll say, next time the workers ask for a bathroom break, give them a bottle.
That's true too, dude. The piss bottles are everywhere now. Like it's
That's terrible.
Yeah, it's horrendous. They really need to improve the working conditions. At Amazon specifically. I would say if Amazon didn't do something about it, maybe some U.S. government action. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, I hope that addresses why we're so jovial. And then they said, okay, ... Hey, if you don't like it, there's other places. I mean, you don't have to be here. Oh, man, I'm telling you. I get no respect around here. Oh, man, I'm telling you. We try and keep it jovial. We try and keep it light. Oh, man, to make sure people don't get overloaded with the news. And what do? Oh, man, they give us the side eye. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, man, your mother gave me the side eye. Oh, man. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support, helping this channel to keep on running. Live Life Toaster Bath. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, real quick, 2 live chat questions I wanted to address that I just saw come across. Plexus said, how about covering what's going on in Venezuela? I can wrap that up in 10 seconds. Right now, Maduro is still seizing power. He's still sending out his thugs to put people down, not letting them protest. And also, the U.S. has recognized the opposition leader as the real president, and Argentina has also recognized the opposition as the real president. So, Maduro is not the legitimate leader according to the West, but he's still there, and he's still putting people down, and he's lining up all the dissidents that are against him and making them shout communist slogans. So, he's going full communist. It's not good. Also, I see David Long. He also asked a different question. He said, when offline at night, how do you monitor breaking news? And do you have others call to wake you up, or do you just sleep till morning? And the way I typically do it is I do have some notifications set on specific sources on Twitter and also Telegram and other places. If something comes across one of my trusted sources, it'll beep on the phone and make a noise and all that good stuff and vibrate as well. So then I'll wake up and read it. If it's something that's not from a trusted source, I might just wait until the morning to read it and see what happened. But that's typically how I do it. But Enforcer, would you like to weigh in on either one?
I think you weighed in on them incredibly well, and we have more super chats to get to, man. We got to get to them.
Yes, indeed. And our next super chat goes to Patrick Walters. He puts in his first ever super chat on a live stream. And thank you very much, Patrick, for that support and helping to keep us running. He says, XRP, the secret.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Extra RP, like you get RP in a video game or something like that, like some points.
Bro, XRP, the secret. I gotta say, thank you for the support. Helping this channel to keep on running, Patrick Walters, and of course supporting this and making this possible. That is your first super chat ever, and I got to give you a huge shout out and I thank you for that. Because folks like you who support the channel help this thing to be possible, and we are greatly appreciative and thankful for folks like you, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this stream possible for so many people, like so many of them. If it wasn't for folks like you who support this channel and help it to keep on running, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible for so many people, and we wouldn't be able to make it possible for so many people if it wasn't for folks like you who support this channel and help it to keep on running. And I did that like 4 times deliberately, but still, thank you so much once again for the support, Patrick Walters. What's crazy, I gotta say this, what is really crazy is we have had 30 super chats tonight, and 94,000 people have watched this stream. Those 30 people or so who have super chatted, some of them just $1, some of them about $100 at the most tonight, all 30 of y'all have helped to make this channel possible for 94,000 people. Just the 30 of y'all did, because y'all help us to be able to do this as a job, and I got to thank you so much for that. I got to thank you for putting in that XRP, the secret, and thank you once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from Uncovered Cube, and thank you very much for that support as well. They said, LSA, thanks for all y'all do, and by the way, there's a water tower in Florence, Kentucky that says, welcome y'all, LOL, LMAO.
Welcome y'all. There's a lot of signs to say that down here in Alabama. There really is, but still, Kentucky, that's actually pretty far north for one of those. But still, yeah, thank you so much once again for supporting and sharing that with us on Uncovered Cube. And also, thank you for enjoying what we do. And thank you for sharing that little tidbit of info with us. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've got a $5 super chat from Whiskey Mike 80 once again. And he says, Slava Ukraine.
And Slava Ukraine. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you, Whiskey Mike 80, who support this channel and help it to make it possible. And we are greatly appreciative and thankful for folks like you who help to make this thing a reality. And so with that, thank you once again, and Slava Ukraini. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, before we move on to our next one here, I saw another piece of breaking news come across our Twitter feed. It looks like we have additional footage of an absolutely massive secondary detonation at Russia's Morozov air base. And it looks like some bombs or some rockets might be exploding secondarily. Some very large explosions. Take a look at that, Enforcer. Let's see it.
Ooh la la! Look at this!
Oh, bliad.
And
That's like the Oppenheimer explosion.
Yar, they hit the ammo detonators, but boy, dang.
Ooh. I should bring a fire extinguisher next time.
Man, bro, looks like they're getting a little toasty.
Man, I can't stand it, man. I can't stand it.
Oh, dude, wait, hang on. Can we pull up a Jeff Bezos laugh? Like, can we?
Probably copyrighted and royalties attached to it.
Yeah, there can't be. There can't be. Hold up. Oh, wait a minute. There really is.
I would love for it to be after I'm dead.
Oh, God. There it is. Oh, my God. That's horrifying.
Bro, let me see if I can rewind that really quickly. Goodness.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, my Lord.
Laughs and rich. 10,000 per chuckle.
Wait, hang on. There's more.
40 minutes with you. It's already clicking down. We're going to use every one, so no droning on. Okay?
I see what you did.
No, that's coming up too, but that was actually not supposed to be bad.
Wait, he did Elmer Fudd.
That's not even funny.
Dude, he did Elmer Fudd, and then he did, like, evil maniacal laughter. He went, I see what you did. It's like, what the hell? It's like, dude, he just did, like, 2 laughs, like, in, like, 10 seconds. But anyways, with that, we can't drone on. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, greetings to LSA Sergeant Figment in the live chat, by the way.
He's safe.
Big shout out. He's safe.
He's in Ukraine.
And also, let me get rid of this person right here. They said, you sound like idiots.
That's the
point. It's like the guy who's one of the richest people in the world sounds like the biggest idiot. I guess you call him the biggest idiot.
Wait, Matthew. That's the point. Anyways, go ahead, Matthew. Go ahead.
Oh, I'll just say shout out to LSA Sergeant Figment. Then I got distracted by that bot right there, but I took care of him. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat, we have a $5 donation from Dark Warrior 137, and thank you very much, Dark Warrior, for that support. He said, "It's easy to forget, but the people of Iran are actually very fond of the U.S. and the Western world, and honestly hoping that they dismantle their government."
You know, that is true, actually. Though Iranians, from what we know, they do like the United States government. The problem is that we don't deal with the Israeli people, we have to deal with the Israeli government. And so when we deal with the Iranians, we have to look at them in a hostile manner, because sadly we don't get to deal with that average Iranian guy running a corner shop in Tehran. We have to deal with that with people like Khamenei, pretty vicious guys like that. And they're the ones representing all of these nice, well-minded, well-thought people inside of Iran. And I would completely understand. I completely agree with you, Dark Warrior. But at the same time, on a national foreign policy level, we have to deal with the Iranians as though they are a hostile nation. Hopefully one day we can reconcile those differences, maybe when the government changes in Iran. But for now, we still have to deal with them in a hostile stance, because the Iranian government certainly is not allowing any kind of leniency, or I guess you could call it a little bit of slack in the rope. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Dark Warrior. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Man, I see some people getting so triggered over the laugh. It's like they don't understand. They're coming in here talking about, you won't be laughing that hard when war comes to your doorstep. It's like, we're not even talking about the war. We're talking about rich guys laugh. It's like, what the hell? But anyways, moving on to our next one here. We have a $10 super chat from Tom Xman. And huge shout out to Tom for that support. He said, bring back up the original first bombing in Crimea, where Russia said smoking in wrong place.
I don't know which one that was. I don't know. I'll have to circle back and get back with you on that one. I hate to say it, because I can't remember the first bombing in Crimea. It was so long ago. It was like 2 years ago or so. So sadly, I just would not be able to recall that off the top of my head. But still, I thank you so much once again for support, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And you know, I don't want to take up too much time here. Oh, but with that, we're on to the next one. Thank you so much once again.
All right, and our next super chat here goes to A-Star, who puts in a 5 and says, thanks to Slovenia, Turkey, Norway, and Germany, God bless them, for the helping to bring back the U.S. political prisoners from Russia.
And I would agree with that completely. It really was a massive international effort to try and get those prisoners out of Russia. Sadly, though, we did trade the Rider of the White Horse to bring her the apocalypse to get a couple of them out. But still, it is great to have them back, I suppose. And so a huge shout out to those countries for being involved in that prisoner exchange. And so with that, thank you so much once again for your support, A-Star, and helping this channel to keep on running. The support does help us to keep this channel on air and keep it online. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one right here goes to Darren Quinn. He puts in a $5 donation, and thank you very much, Darren, for that support. He says, Kim Pop squeaked his rubber ducky. Let's see. He pop squeaked that guy that ran into the tree on film.
And I gotta say, I would agree with that completely, Darren Quinn. I'm gonna have to lower it down on the because it's like ripping my vocal cords apart, like only in like a couple of tries. But beyond that, I would agree with you. I would say that he really did, pop squeak that guy for sure, and he had his ham hung, no doubt about it. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. Pretty good one, I gotta admit. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Caviar, who puts in a 5. It says, what would your strategy be if you were in charge of, if given all promised systems by next year? And LLT, LC.
My strategy, actually, I would have to say, no matter what, at this point, I think the Ukrainians are kind of stuck in a stalemate, really, because of manpower concerns. And so, even if Ukraine got all systems, it would really just be to attrit the Russians until they give up. That would be my strategy, because wasting Ukrainian lives in offensives that probably will not achieve what they're hoping to would be a pretty bad idea in the long run at this point. So I would say conserve manpower, conduct a defensive, let the Russians attrit themselves because they're still trying to take the remainder of Donetsk, and they're pretty dedicated to that proposition. So just let them keep trying, they'll keep failing, and eventually they'll peace out. Hopefully it'll lead to an economic collapse where Ukraine could regain a decent amount of its territory, but I would not go for full-on offensives trying to reclaim major areas or split the land bridge in two. And so that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Caviar, a very good question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Julian343, who puts in a $5 donation and says, how do you think the proxy warfare in Sudan will... Excuse me. Let me start over. They said, how do you think the proxy warfare in Sudan will affect the war in Ukraine? And right now, they have special forces fighting Wagner in the Sudan government.
And that is true, Kachillian 343. And I would have to be honest with you, I really don't know how it does affect the war. It's like for Ukraine, this is a part of the world that they're not even really involved in. I don't even really know why they have the special forces down here, Captain Wagner guys, because it's like, what does it really do for them? I mean, maybe the Wagner guys don't get to possibly return to Ukraine, maybe, but I don't really see the benefit, to be entirely honest. I think it's just Ukraine doing things to try and wipe out Russian forces wherever they are, but I don't really see where it provides them any kind of long-term or short-term benefit in any large, meaningful way. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Russell Rizzo. He puts in a 5 and says, isn't it true the military aid that we give is mostly retired equipment, and replacing it creates U.S. jobs as well? And should we add to the debt to increase it?
And that is true, Russ Rizzo. We actually give them old equipment. We never give them anything new. And then in our spending bills, we actually allocate most of the money into producing new weapon systems to replace the old ones we're giving away. So I would say, yes, it is something that we should increase the debt for. And also, sometimes people don't get this. People just don't understand this. Debt is good. It's good. It helps us grow.
it's good. More aid, trucks, and well, anyway.
Well, you know, really though, speaking about it on a serious perspective, sometimes national debt is good. Like, people don't know that. Like, if the U.S. government takes out debt to pump money into the civilian sector or the civilian industry, that can help. Like, that actually can help out just in general increasing the tax base. That's something that a lot of people don't get anymore, is that if the U.S. government subsidized a lot more of transportation than we do now, a lot of things would improve in this country overnight, really. Well, when I say overnight, it would be over years, but practically overnight in a historical sense. Like if we improved like road infrastructure, rail infrastructure, harbor infrastructure, and if we also did a couple of changes as well that I can't get into because those actually start to move into domestic politics, you could actually see drastic changes overnight. I wish I could get into it a little bit more, but we want to make sure to stay within the no politics rule of this channel. Well, actually, it'd really be my own policies. It wouldn't really be supporting or condemning either of the sides that exist right now, because to be honest, both of them are a little too inept to come up with this kind of stuff, at least on a mainstream platform, so I'd kind of be standing on my own. You know what? I'll tell y'all. So one of the big problems with America currently in the modern day, and this is one that I know I'm not touching on modern politics with because no one's talking about this, is the American railroads. Because the American railroads are actually owned by 4 monopolies. CSX, Norfolk Southern, which make up the entire East Coast, CSX and Norfolk Southern do. And then once you cross the Mississippi River, there are 2 major railroad companies that control everything west of the Mississippi, which is most of the continental United States. That is BNSF and Union Pacific. These 4 railway companies dominate the United States, and they also dominate all of the railroads in the United States as well, except for an incredibly small amount of it in the Northeast Corridor from Washington, D.C. to Boston. That's controlled by Amtrak, which is a state-run passenger rail company, but the rest of it is all privatized and owned by these companies. These companies, really since the time of J.P. Morgan, way back at the beginning of the 20th century, have been slowly trying to figure out how to maximize the amount of revenue that they can make per mile or per ton of cargo. It's how much money can they make per ton of cargo? How much do they have to expend to move that ton of cargo 1 mile, and how much do they make moving it a mile? And so far, they have been able to whittle that down to the point that American railroad infrastructure is absolutely under equipped for modern day rail traffic. I mean, it's insanely under maintained. If you ever actually look at it, it's probably some of the worst rail infrastructure in the world currently. It also none of the United States is electrified, which, you know, that has nothing to do with anything else that's being talked about in modern politics. That really has to do a lot with tractive effort power and all that sort of stuff. None of it's electrified. There are no rail passenger services that would be successful in America. There are places where they know rail transport would be successful, and Brightline is certainly showing a great example, and yet there are no private rails because, one, these railroad companies don't want to possibly run a loss sometimes on those rail routes and running rail passenger services, and 2, why would they when they're already making more money than they ever could? And to actually have a competitive rail transport service, they would have to upgrade rail infrastructure, which means that they're not giving a lot of profit, well, as much profit as they are to their shareholders currently, and that would be considered a bad thing because nowadays in the modern world, railroads don't consider success off of their public reputation and their profits. It's entirely based off of profits, which is why the rail infrastructure is so bad off. And not only that, because of the monopoly system and how the railroads have ended up forming in the modern day, the reason why there was the massive supply shortages in America during the Chinese whirlybird virus was not because there was just nothing being made. There was plenty of stuff being made, but everything was coming into a major port like Los Angeles. And then once it made it to Los Angeles, the cargo would be offloaded at the major port, and then it'd just sit there. And because the railroad companies were having these huge issues, really with having any crews around to operate these trains, because either everyone was sick with the Chinese whirlybird virus, or they were having to operate off of some whack-ass system that they make for themselves, none of the goods were actually making it anywhere in the United States, which is actually where most of the major shortages came from during that time as far as consumer goods went. And it's entirely because the railroad system is pretty jacked up. Not only that, but the working conditions on American railroads are wildly poor. On an average American railroad, this is actually for all Class 1 railroads, which are the big 4 I told you all about, there is no real work schedule that is laid out for railroad engineers, which are the guys who actually run the trains. They get called 4 hours in advance, and they're told, you need to be down here right now because you're about to be running a train. And they have 4 hours to get from wherever they are to getting to that rail yard and getting to run that locomotive. 4 hours. They could get called at 2 o'clock in the morning. They could have just gone to sleep at 12. They get 2 hours of sleep. They get called at 2 o'clock in the morning on a moment's notice, and they got to be down that rail yard by 6 o'clock in the morning. That is an absolutely insane way to run a railroad. Railroads don't run like that anywhere else around the world. They run off of timetables and schedules, but the American railroad system is so erratic and so poorly managed by these big four companies that there really isn't a lot of progress being made. It's a woefully inefficient system, and it's making transportation in the United States, because most of it gets transported by truck because it's just simply better and a lot more versatile and maneuverable compared to how crappy the railroad system's being run these days, that it creates a more expensive transport system. So to move a ton of cargo a mile on truck versus train is about, I think it's something like 14 cents more per mile, which is a massive margin where we're talking about pennies per mile per ton. 14 cents more is huge. And then that price gets eaten by the consumers. And that's why a lot of consumer goods in America are slowly getting more and more expensive, because American railroads aren't wanting to focus on transporting consumer goods anymore because they're so uncompetitive compared to the truck, and they're making themselves more uncompetitive. There's no way for them to compete. So what they do is that they start to focus on major aggregates like coal. Like they end up just transporting almost nothing but coal. And nowadays that's almost all U.S. rail transports is like 30 to 40% coal, and is mostly for power plants and the power grid and everything. And then they transport, I think, it's some oil. They also transport a large amount of oil, but it's usually industrial goods in large bulk quantities because that's where they make the most profit. And so they just screw themselves out of everything else. The supply chain is all messed up because of that. And there needs to be some pretty big changes with that in America. It's something that no one talks about. Like, have y'all ever heard this before from either side? No, you haven't, because both sides are a little too watered down these days to actually talk about real things that are actually impacting y'all on a daily basis. And so there has to be major changes, the major legislation passed to change the working conditions for locomotive engineers, because I would personally have to say that seems pretty damn cruel to only give someone a 4-hour notice to get to their job, and if they can't get there in time, they get fired on the spot pretty much. That seems pretty cruel to me, just for anyone in general, and that's a pretty rough working life to be in, considering you could get called at pretty much any time of the week. You can't even have a social life. You don't even know when you're working. You don't even know how long you're working. You just have to show up and do something, and that seems pretty messed up to me. And not only that, the railroad infrastructure has to be improved on a major scale as well, because the railroad infrastructure is falling apart so badly that there is really nothing that can be done anymore. And these companies aren't going to maintain it themselves, because if they do, the amount of repairs they have to conduct on their own private rails are so expensive, they're going to be wiping about 30 years of profit out completely just trying to repair the bare minimum of the infrastructure they have. So what the U.S. government should do is that they should either start to subsidize the railroad companies again, so that way they'll improve the infrastructure, so that way it's actually usable for passenger rail companies like Amtrak, which is having a horrendous time right now because of this, or they need to subsidize these companies to maintain the infrastructure, and then they also need to subsidize them to start higher speed passenger rail operations again. But with that, I can hear Matthew or something in the microphone. So I know he's trying to tell me we have more questions to go. But that's what I would do, me personally. So if you like what you're hearing, if you think that makes common sense, vote for me for president in 2040. That's like one of the only things I'm ever going to get into, because I know no one ever talks about that kind of stuff. But logistics and infrastructure is a very important part of a government's operation, and for some reason, no one ever focuses on it anymore. So anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one's going to go to Patrick Walters, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Patrick, for that support once again. And let's see here. Oh, so I see what Patrick was talking about now. So Enforcer, he's talking about a cryptocurrency, so I'm going to let you take this one.
Oh, well, thank you so much for the support. We usually don't talk about cryptocurrencies on this channel, but I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Bruce Lee. He said, here's 5 for the 5 fund, and take a live chat question, please, and LSA.
And I got to thank you so much for the support, and thank you so much for putting $5 for the Take 5 fund, because we do need to take 5, especially now. We're starting to go overtime because I went into that whole rant about the rails. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to take a live chat. So what do we got?
And this one goes to Stephen Lawrence, who says, aren't there 2 carriers in the Mediterranean as well?
I don't think there are 2 carriers in the Mediterranean currently. I think it's just the Teddy Roosevelt in the Strait of Hormuz right now, but I could be incorrect because I'm working off of information that I got, and maybe it's not complete. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, huge shout out to the CoolTube 2020 for putting in a 3, as well as David Dornblaser for putting in a 2. Pedal to the Metal 65 also put in a 2, along with Mark Andre Brunette. And huge shout out to CoolTube, David, Pedal to the Metal, and Mark very much for their support and helping to keep us running, because we do appreciate it very much. And our next super chat here is going to go to Sandra, who puts in a 20-pound donation, very heavy donation, and that is their first ever super chat on the stream. And thank you very much, Sandra, for that very generous support. And they said thank you from the LSA.
And I got to thank you so much for that support, Sandra, your first super chat ever, all the way from the UK. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for being a part of the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And also, Matthew, big news. We have reached 244,000 subscribers.
Let's go!
Let's go, baby! And so with that, thank you so much once again, Sandra. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the final super chat of the night, and then we're going to be finally getting into the live chats.
All right, and this one's going to go to Barry Woodward, who puts in a 2 and says, at Steve Watkins at work, what do you do at work?
I can't even answer that question. What does he do at work? Like, I don't know. But still, thank you for the support, Barry Woodward, and helping this channel to keep on running. And maybe we'll get an answer to that one day. But might not be today. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the live chat. Sadly, due to time constraints, we're only going to be able to answer 3 live chat questions and also answer the Morse code decoders of the stream. And so what do we got, Matthew?
So the Morse code tonight was solved by Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J., Paul Schultz, and David Millsaps. They said that the Morse code says, the world is setting by idly waiting for the next big war to start in hours. May our side prevail. LSA.
And that's the sound of money, and y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate you for getting that correct. That is really impressive of all of y'all, and once again, a huge shout out to y'all for getting that Morse code message dead on the nail again on the 891st day of the war. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Joey, who says, at what point do you think a draft is going to happen?
Well, most likely after a world war begins, a draft would start to happen, but then we don't even know when a world war would even start to know when a draft would begin, but it would be after a world war started. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Jay Harder, who says, what would be the biggest concern for the U.S. strike force?
The U.S. strike force for the USS Teddy Roosevelt, it would most likely be naval drones, because nowadays that seems to be the biggest threat to any established navy in the world, are these sea-based drones. Air drones would be picked up on radar and shot down wildly easily, but the naval drones do have a way of somehow sneaking up onto larger vessels and possibly hitting them dead on. So that would probably be the biggest threat to the carrier strike group currently in the Strait of Hormuz. But with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. And thank you once again for asking a really interesting question. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Name Redacted, who says, what is the rest of the Middle East saying about the Iran escalation?
The rest of the Middle East, let's see, Saudi Arabia is, well, Jordan said they're going to shoot down their missiles, so they pretty much side with the West. Let's see, Saudi Arabia also, I believe, has quietly made some statements saying that they would side really with the Western side, not really siding with Israel, but really with the West as a whole. Qatar, well, actually, yeah, I think it was Qatar. They put up like a mural of Hania on a building today, which was really stupid. But they're supposedly Western aligned. The UAE has made no comment. Oman has made no comment. The Yemeni government has made no comment. The Houthis, of course, are Iranian aligned. Iraq has not really made a lot of comments, from what I know, generally because they're getting airstriked by the Israelis right now in some different areas. So they're not really making that much of a comment. The SDF has made no comment, and also Bashar's government in Syria has also made no comment as well. So largely, it's either entirely Western aligned or no comments from what we know. And then Turkey, of course, did their stupid crap, but everyone knows what Turkey did because Turkey does Turkey things. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to say, what a night it has been. Almost 100,000 people, 98,000 people have watched this stream since it started 3 hours and 36 minutes ago. That is absolutely crazy. I never thought, Matthew, that we would see days where at least 100,000 people watched the stream before it even ended most nights. But still, here we are, and pretty much 100,000 people have watched this stream. I've got to say a huge thanks to each and every one of y'all for watching. If y'all did enjoy, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to hit that like button. We try and cover the news. Well, we do cover the news every single day of the week, as much and as often and as frequently as we can. And hopefully we'll have a short war summary tomorrow. I think it is Matthew's day. Am I correct with that? Is it your day tomorrow or my day?
I think it may be mine.
I think it is, Matthew. So if there is big news to cover in the middle of the day tomorrow, y'all will see Matthew's short war summary go out. And if there is really, really big news, like a war started in the Middle East, we will be live on air with a stream covering that immediately tomorrow. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
Yes, indeed. And with that, thank you all once again, folks, for another great stream tonight. Of course, it was a long one tonight, almost marathon length, but it was very enjoyable indeed. I hope y'all liked it. And with that, Slav Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and of course, we're ready to stream anytime something goes down, and when it does, you'll see that notification come across your phone. So be on the lookout for that. And with that, good night and see you tomorrow.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Army shall stand.